Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення великої страны. Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар. Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Good God, wait a minute, we're gonna just talk through the intro because we're just putting 8,000 Canadians. Unbelievable, Jesus. Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 417 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And already, we have absolutely demolished the goal thanks to Mark, General of the LSA.
And Mark, Grand General of the Combined Arms of the Least Spring Army, has already put us thousands of dollars over the goal at $7,400 as we speak right now. Unbelievable! I cannot believe it! This is incredible! And we didn't even, we were sitting there and we had just reached 1,000. I was like, yeah, let's go! We reached the goal! And then boom! And Matthew and me went, oh my god! And we were like, what the hell? And we gotta thank Mark for getting us all the way over the goal. And it now looks like we're already, just right now, overshooting the goal. We've already overshot. So now we have to raise the thing tonight. It's just the rule. When we go over it that quickly, we have to raise it. So let me turn off my heater because that got me so freaked out. I feel like I'm burning alive right now. So let me go to the earn section of the YouTube channel and switch this out to 10K instead of 5K. So there it is. It's already up to 7,600. So let me go to the goal and let me go type in a new one. I'm gonna put this one at 10,000 and click continue, and that one ought to get it on up there. But oh my god, I cannot believe that. That's unbelievable. And speaking of which, we've had some crazy news today. It is Ukrainian Easter, actually. It's the Eastern Orthodox Easter Day. So happy Easter to all of our Eastern Orthodox viewers who are watching the channel right now. I hope y'all had a fun Easter, and if y'all are watching this later on, I hope y'all were having a fun Easter while the stream was running. And speaking of which, we haven't even gotten to what tonight's fundraiser actually is. And tonight's fundraiser is Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, which is an incredible nonprofit that has been helping to save the lives of Ukrainian soldiers ever since the beginning of the war. Well, actually around since 2018. They were founded then. The beginning of the war in earnest was around 2014. They came around in 2018, and they've been helping to revive soldiers ever since. They give vital rehabilitation services that help these critically wounded soldiers that have had a second wind to get back on their feet and get back to having a normal life. And that is something that is incredible. They've been doing it greatly. And DCC Prime just threw in 750. What is going on tonight? This is crazy. But of course, make sure to support Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, because every dollar put towards their nonprofit is helping to save another Ukrainian soldier's life and get them back on their feet. And that's an incredible effort. And we've already reached $8.6 thousand right now. We're about to reach 10,000 here soon. And this is why the Lee Spring Army is known across the entirety of YouTube, is because nobody else, no other community can do anything like this. But with that, we now have to get into the news tonight, because while...
Also, real quick, don't forget about me. If you have a question tonight, put @Enforcer Matt in the chat and send it to me, because right now I have only one, so I need a lot more.
Matthew's like, don't leave me here. But anyways, we're going to be moving on into tonight's news, and what better way to start off on a high note like this? Already getting past the $5,000 goal. We're at 8.7 right now, and we're racing on our way. Many of y'all may have noticed this, and I feel like it's time to call them out, YouTube has completely removed the feature where the fundraiser is shown in the live chat. We have not seen it. Oh my god!
Dang!
Oh my god, we're at 10,300! Oh my god!
What in the world?
We did it! We did it again!
417 SEK from Nazareth 2.
Jesus! We're already at $10.3 thousand. What do we do? Do we raise it again?
Raise it again. It's too early to hit goal.
Mark said raise it again. We're at 16 minutes in, and we've already raised $10,000. 1 second, we got to go raise it again. I'm happy that I kept it over here on the fundraiser screen. Also, I'll let y'all watch how this is done, since y'all don't really see this on the screen a lot. Here's all the fundraisers we still have open. We have a limit of 50 of them. So once we have a new one now, we've run so many, we have to get rid of the last one and then put in a new one. But let me go to set goal right here, and what in the world do we go to now? I mean,
put it at 15, I guess.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like, with how it's going, I think we'll reach 15 really quickly. So we'll put 15. Good.
Someone said 30K. Jeez, 30K. That would be insane.
Good God, that would be crazy if we did that. But we're just going to keep it right there, and we're going to add that. So now it's up to 15K, if y'all see it below your screen. So there you have it. I'm going to move that back off the screen. Now that fundraiser will do whatever it does. It's probably going to be going into space again. But oh my god, we haven't even gotten to the news tonight. Jeez. But anyways, it's time for us, finally, 17 minutes into the stream starting, to get into the news. Because while it is the fundraiser night, and the priority of tonight is to make sure to raise as much as possible to save as many Ukrainian lives, y'all are here for the news. And we do want to make sure to get to that, although we're completely blown away right now. Actually, there's a couple of things to cover before that. First off, we would love to call out a couple of viewers that have sent us some stuff in the mail. And we've gotten some really cool things in the mail. Wait, no, it's not Super Rich. Oh my god, sorry, I'm so blown away right now. I'm getting names mixed up. It's Turn Off Your Gaslights. Turn Off Your Gaslights sent us some Canadian insignia from the Canadian Armed Forces. I believe they're cap badges or something like that. They're really neat, and I gotta thank Turn Off Your Gaslights so much once again, not only for sending us the first little neat like gifts that you sent, but also these as well. Those were really cool. We would also like to call out, and real quick, Matthew, I want to make sure we have the names correct. The fella who sent us the Nebraska militia patches.
That guy is Raven from Nebraska.
Raven from Nebraska sent us some patches here, and I'll grab one real quick, that say the 1st Nebraska Volunteer Militia. And it's incredibly cool to know that folks around the entirety of the world, and also from all kinds of places, have been sending us cool things. And I got to thank you so much for the patches, because they're actually pretty cool looking. And then we also had one more, Matthew.
We had Old Foggy send us a very kind letter as well, where he called us Goose and Buellers.
Oh, yeah, he did. I'm reading it right here. Let's see. About 2.5 weeks, I discovered your channel. So, like, just in case y'all don't know, Old Foggy has been around since the first 3 weeks of the channel. So he was actually here before the times of Matt. And so he was here before the first schism, before the Moscow Mike incident, all that stuff. He was here before that. And I got to thank all three of y'all so much for sending us incredibly neat little things. Of course, we love letters. We love reading letters. And we also love the neat little gifts that y'all send us, like the patches and also the cap badges. We think those are incredibly cool. And we thank you so much once again for sending them. If anyone else wants to send any neat trinkets or send us letters, because we love reading letters, and when I say that, we really do. Like, that's one of the coolest things we ever get. Like, the gifts are neat, but reading the stories of y'all's lives is one of the coolest things that I've ever seen, like being able to read what y'all have done. So make sure to always send us a letter if you send us something. And also, you can find the P.O. Box address if you do want to send something to us in the mail. It is in the About section of our YouTube page. So just go over there to that little tab, and it'll show you the P.O. Box address where you can send us letters and all kinds of neat little gifts if you would like. And we're always appreciative of every single one of them. And so with that, now it is time. Oh yeah, also another thing I forgot. Today I actually went through and I added up all of the donations I've given over the course of 417 days to fundraisers, and I haven't even sent in this one tonight. But after I send in this one right here, which is another $100 donation to this fundraiser, I added them all together, and including this one, over the course of the entire war, I put in $11,800 of donations into these nonprofits to help support them and to help save Ukrainian lives. I'd never actually put that total together, and up until now, I've been telling everyone that I only put around $5,000 to $6,000 in, but it was actually $11.8 thousand, and we're throwing in another 100 right now. So that should be popping up here, probably at the same time I'm saying this, because there's a 30-second delay in between what you'll hear and what I'm saying. So we'll put that in, and it should be popping up. There we go. There's another 100. And so now it's finally time for us to get into the news. We've covered everything there is to cover before we get into the news, and we're already at $11,000 nearly. And so we're well on our way towards 15,000 20 minutes in. We're now going to be moving finally into the area of Kyiv, as we heard today that the Canadian government has actually, I guess you could say, commandeered an Antonov 124 that the Russian Federation was using, and it's now being handed over to the Antonov company of the Ukrainians. We can actually see a picture of the Antonov 124 in question. It looks alike, and it really is just a smaller version of the Antonov 224, the Miria, or otherwise called the Dream, that many of y'all may remember was destroyed at the Battle of Hostomel. This thing is just a smaller version of that with a smaller payload, smaller range, everything else, but it will be handed over to the Ukrainians as part of sanctions against Russia. And I think that's pretty good, and also will probably help the Ukrainians after the war is over to make sure that they get on their feet economically, as the kind of transportation that this thing can provide will most likely be very valuable to Ukraine as a nation, and also the Antonov company, which has lost their largest and, I guess you could say, biggest breadwinner of their company. We're now going to be moving on from that news in the area of the Hostomel airport and on out of Kyiv and into the area of Belgorod across the Russian border. We saw today that an electrical substation caught on fire and boinged to the ground. We only got to see about 3 seconds of it. Nice music, nice beats. And also it is great to see that the electrical substations in that area are on fire. Of course, it's one thing to attack electrical substations that are in place like Lviv or Kyiv that isn't actually a part of the front line, but considering that a lot of Russian supplies are going through this area and most Russian railroads are actually electrified, destroying electrical substations like these directly affect the kind of rail transportation that the Russian army is able to levy against the Ukrainians and being able to deliver supplies and reinforcements to the battlefield inside of Ukraine. And so it is absolutely wonderful to see that this electrical substation is on fire. Speaking of fire, and some very interesting things regarding fire, I had to make sure we had no international news there, by the way, just in case y'all are wondering, because, you know, just in case y'all didn't notice, we're completely blown away with how quickly this fundraiser is running tonight. This has to be the fastest fundraiser we've ever run since the year anniversary, so I'm kind of thrown off a little bit in a very good way. So we're now going to be moving on into our location unknown news, where we can see where we can see the Ukrainians putting down a little bit of fire onto a Russian AGM position. You see the Ukrainian soldier on his phone checking out the Ruski. We see them dropping a nade and getting the AGS position dead on. We now see another bomblet dropping near a Russian dugout. We can't really tell what kind of damage that caused, however, but it does appear that there's a Russian doing some aerobics over there. We see him still observing the Russian positions as another bomblet's dropped. And it explodes, billowing out a little bit of white smoke and showing that there may be some kind of ammunition on, well, actually the thicket's on fire that the Russians made to hide in. Not really a good place to hide. We can now see the Russians running through the tree line as the Ukrainian soldier still continues to observe them. We now see them dropping another grenade, this time onto the AGS-17, and it appears that it was a success, being able to take out the AGS. We can see the AGS right there, knocked out from the bomblet. And we can see the thicket still on fire. Update, sticks burn.
Така історія одного дня.
We see the Ukrainians have had a fun time with this little job today. And with that, that's the end of the clip. And real quick, I'm actually going to be taking a moment. All right, so we're at $11.3 thousand right now. Because it's no longer in the live chat where we can easily see it, I'm actually having to use my phone on the side to try and see how large the fundraiser's gotten at this point. We are at $11.3 thousand, just in case if anyone was curious. We're now going to be...
Excellent.
Yes, excellent news. Absolutely tremendous. But with that, we're moving on to our next bit of location unknown news. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a Leopard 2. We don't know where this Leopard 2 is, but it is in service with the Ukrainian army, and it is firing at something. We don't know if this is a training field or what, but here's a very small video of a Leopard 2A4 in operation. Get ready to fire. We see it firing. and then the video replays. Now, I'm not sure where the hell this is. The hatch is open, which makes me think it may possibly be that this is in a training field and not on the front lines. Regardless, this is the first time ever we've seen a Leopard 2 tank fire its main gun on Ukrainian soil on film. And so it appears that the Leopards are literally just inches away from being let loose onto the lines and being, as many people call it, free for the first time ever. And so that's very wild to see. That's crazy, actually. It is a Leopard 2A4, by the way. It's not the cool ones that have, like, the really cool angular armor on the turret. It's just a normal flat-fronted Leopard 2A4 turret. But it's incredibly cool to see that there is a Leopard 2 that's actually firing its gun in Ukraine, and that they also have the ammunition for the tank, the crews trained for the tank, and it is operating somewhere in Ukraine. Probably not on the front lines, though, yet. With that, we're moving on to our next clip, where you can see that the Ukrainians have tricked out a BMP-2. Now, many of y'all may have heard the phrase "pimp my ride." I'm sure a lot of y'all have not heard about tricking out your BMP, and it appears that the Ukrainians have been getting into the tricking out business, and they've tuned up this BMP. Here's a clip. Also, we're going to have to mute the music, but we can see the Ukrainians standing on top of it right here, and we can also see some kind of a mud flap on the front. I don't really know what the rubber flaps are for. You see them on a decent amount of vehicles.
Dang! Do you see this? Another
Oh
5,500 from
my god!
Mark?
What the hell? Wait a minute, did we just go over 15,000?
Voice crack. Okay, I think we did. Yeah!
Oh my lord! Good lord! Wait a minute, I'm waiting.
Mark,
Oh my
that
god,
is
we did it!
insane.
We did it! We've made it to 15,000!
Hey,
Let's go! I can't believe this. I don't
That's
know if
insane.
I don't know if we want to raise it again, but good God, this is going crazy. We got up to $15.5 thousand.
Mark's been carrying tonight, man. That is crazy.
Man, Mark's going to have to go to a chiropractor after this because his back's hurting from carrying this fundraiser. Good God, I can't believe it. This is crazy.
Damn, son, where'd you find that?
Damn, son, where'd you find this? Good Lord, I can't believe this. But we're going to let the video keep on running and see the tricked out BMP. But good Lord. And we see
Mark,
them
would
all.
you like to make a speech?
Yeah, Mark, would you like to make a speech to the crowd? As Celestial said, double it up, double it up.
Call them out, call them out.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait, that's just a normal AK. But we can just see them hanging out here on top of the BMP, and of course, a tricked out BMP with a lot of Ukrainians hanging out on top of it. With that, we're now going to be moving on from this clip and on into our next one, where we can also see Easter on the front lines for the Ukrainians, or at least some pictures. And these are quite funny because you see, Easter is always associated with Easter eggs. And we can see that the Ukrainians have actually painted up some grenades, and it appears that the grenades are the Easter eggs this year, at least for this Ukrainian unit. We can also see that they have legitimate eggs. This picture alone costs about $12,000 right now with the given price of eggs at this moment. And we can also see in the next picture some Ukrainians hanging out and eating what appears to be some kind of a large muffin or a cake with little Ukrainian Ministry of Defense eggs laid out in between some sausages. This is actually a nice little scene here. That's pretty neat. And then in the next picture, we can also see this guy with a literal plate of treats with his cat. In celebrating the Eastern Orthodox Easter. We actually had our Easter here in the United States, because the United States works off of the Protestant date for Easter on the first weekend of April. The Eastern Orthodox Easter actually falls during, I believe it's the second weekend of April, if I'm correct, Matthew. This is the second weekend.
I think so, yeah.
I think so. So it's great to see that they're finally getting to celebrate Easter, and that's also where we found out a decent amount of the LSA is right now. They are actually celebrating the Eastern Orthodox Easter. And so to all of the ones who are watching this stream later on, I hope you all did have a great Easter today, much like these Ukrainian soldiers did in these little pictures. With that, we're now going to be moving on from that bit of location unknown news and on into the next one, where we saw that the Ukrainians made a brim from a T-62. The Ukrainians have been capturing Russian T-62s on a fairly decent schedule, I guess you could say. Not an incredibly fast one, but at least one a day or maybe one every other day. And they've been trying to come up with creative ways to integrate these into the Ukrainian army instead of just allowing them to sit around. There are a lot of T-62s that are also in Ukrainian graveyards as well, and so finding parts to replace on these T-62s and keep them running isn't actually that hard at all for the Ukrainian armed forces. It is a fairly easy undertaking. And we can see right here that they took one of the T-62s and turned it into a Brim, which is a recovery vehicle. They outfitted a crane onto this thing, and now they'll be able to use this T-62 to drive it up to a vehicle that's stuck on the front lines, attach a winch to it or a crane, and then pull it out of wherever it's stuck. This, of course, is going to help out Ukrainian units in making sure to keep their armed forces and their armor running as much as possible. And it doesn't really matter that this thing is dated in this kind of category, I guess you could say, of equipment. The thing is, it's just kind of sitting around. It's not really like it has to have incredibly good armor. It's not like it really has to have incredibly good anything. All it needs is some horsepower and some traction to be able to do its job, and hopefully this T-62 will have the horsepower and the traction to be able to pull T-64s, T-80s, and T-72s out of the mud, so that way the Ukrainian army can keep those operational. We're now going to be moving on from this interesting little clip showing that the Ukrainians are always coming up with ingenious ways to use anything they can get their hands on, and we're now going to be moving on into our final bit of location unknown news already, which is the Russian casualty report. The Russian casualties have not been exceptionally high today, but we have seen a few things being lost that are quite nice. For example, 2 Bobcat skid steers, and of course the comments are going wild.
Look at that.
Oh,
2 more. Boom. Slava Ukraine. Oh, what in the hell is that?
I don't know what that is. Isn't that I think I'm trying to think right here, Matthew. Isn't that guy that Lavrov? Isn't that Lavrov right there?
No, he's a horse. He's not.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Well,
he's a horse.
He could be a clown and a horse too.
Well, I could see him both. Honestly, horse clown. We'll call him horse clown. But let's see. Let's see here. Interesting. Let's see. Russia's Vietnam. I wouldn't actually disagree with that. Let's see here. Should have where what Ukraine has lost. Wow, what the hell does that mean? Should have here. Oh, should have here what Ukraine has lost. Oh, okay. Not bad, not bad. Now you. Let's see. Goebbels level propaganda. This guy's coping. But anyways, moving on into the actual numbers, we saw that 520 Russian soldiers had been taken out over the past 24 hours. That, of course, does not include the wounded. And someone actually said our audio is off. No way.
Oh, that cannot be.
That's not so. The audio is on. Make sure to check it on your end, though, although you can't hear me right now. So 520 Russian soldiers have been taken out over the past 24 hours. 10 armored personnel carriers have also been taken out over the past 24 hours as well, which is actually a little bit above the war's average, just by about 2 APCs. We also saw that 12 supply trucks have been destroyed, which is always nice to see. It's good to know the supplies are not making it to the front lines in the numbers that are needed. We also saw that 4 tanks were destroyed, which is on up there for at least the past week or two's numbers. We also saw that 10 artillery pieces have been destroyed, and that's about 2 artillery batteries plus 2 additional artillery pieces. We also saw that 3 MLRSs were destroyed. We haven't seen losses in that category in large numbers like that in at least a week or two, and so it is good to see that 3 MLRSs have been destroyed. We just don't know exactly where. We also saw that 1 airplane was shot down, of course, incredibly rare, because over 417 days, only 308 planes have been lost, which means that the Russians are usually losing a plane almost every other day, but not every single day, or they're losing several on one day. We can also see that they lost 1 anti-aircraft warfare vehicle, and of course the 2 Bobcat skid steers. So in terms of infantry losses, it wasn't an exceptionally high day, it was more so the war's average, but in every other category, in terms of vehicular losses, it has not been that bad of a day at all. In fact, it's been just slightly above average when combining everything together and then seeing what the average is over the course of the war. They're not doing bad today in inflicting losses on the Russians. And there is a video I will not be able to show you all tonight, but I did include a link to on our map that will show you how badly the Wagner unit is losing their forces inside of Bakhmut. It's a little too graphic for us to show, but, it's still there in case if y'all want to watch it, and I'll show you all where that is here in a little bit. But with that, that's the end of the location unknown news. And really quick, I'm actually going to be shooting us over into Korea, because while we don't have any specific news bulletins here, because there wasn't any video or picture evidence to speak of or anything for us to physically show about it, we did hear that the South Korean Navy fired at North Korean ships that were passing over the, I guess you could say, the boundary line in between North Korea and South Korea. We don't know if it escalated any further than that. It appears that that was the only thing that occurred today, is that they fired warning shots at the North Korean Navy or North Korean vessels, and we believe that those vessels may have at this point already crossed back across the boundary line and into North Korean waters. So there wasn't really a lot for us to report here or a lot to talk about. This is actually somewhat normal. This kind of stuff happens every once in a while, every few months. So it wasn't newsworthy enough to get its own bulletins and its own story, but I wanted to make sure to share that with y'all, just in case if any of y'all were wondering. Also, we decided to completely shelve the Sudan segment, just in case y'all noticed. We aren't covering any Sudanese news, because right now it's still so confusing what's going on down there. I can't even really cover the story, because when we get the videos, because I do have videos that I looked at today, I can't really tell you who is who and who's fighting for what or what's really going on down there at all. It's absolute confusion right now and chaos. So we didn't include that story today, because we kind of need things to be a little bit more clear for us to discuss, because right now it appears that it is just a PvP battle royale free-for-all in Khartoum, and that's actually how it's pronounced. Some of y'all last night were like, it's not cartoon, it's Khartoum or something like that. It's in American pronunciation, it's actually Khartoum, and it sounds a lot like cartoon. Let's see, I think in British pronunciation it's like Khartoum or something similar like that, but I made sure to get that correct before we went live on air that night, so it is Khartoum. Which sounds kind of weird that their capital sounds like a cartoon, but anyways, we're unfortunately not going to be covering that news tonight, and we're going to be moving back into Ukraine, because we actually had a load of news tonight. And when we get into the Bakhmut segment, there are actually experimental prototype tanks that have never been seen or used before on the battlefield being used right now by Ukrainian armed forces inside the city of Bakhmut. And we actually have video footage of these things in operation, so fairly interesting to see. And we're also going to be moving into Dnipro before we get to that news, because we saw something really neat today. We got to see that a father and daughter met each other, and we don't really get a lot of videos like this. It's a very touching one, and I wanted to show it tonight, considering that we're running a fundraiser for Revive Soldiers of Ukraine. I thought it would pull a few heartstrings where people would feel more encouraged to support Doctors Without Borders, but considering that we've already blown through 3 separate goals, I don't really feel like we need to pull that many heartstrings now, but still, it's a very sweet video and included in our news tonight, and so I want to make sure to show it to y'all. And so, here's the video, and I'm going to be unmuting it real quick. We see the daughter seeing her dad. And she immediately broke into tears. And that's the end of the clip, but incredibly sweet to see. And of course, what Ukrainian soldiers are fighting to defend is their families from the Russian armed forces. And of course, it's soldiers like these that end up getting wounded so badly that Revive Soldiers of Ukraine has to help them out with rehabilitation, so that way they can get back to a normal life. And this soldier is very fortunate right now, at least. He'll probably go back to the lines, and he'll probably once again chance death to make sure to defend his country and his family, like this daughter right here. But in reality, there's a lot of soldiers like him that have ended up in worse shape, losing a leg, or maybe even being paralyzed, or maybe even taking a brain injury, and of course having to require those vital services that Revive Soldiers of Ukraine offers to make sure that they can get back to having as normal a life as possible. And that's what we are running this fundraiser for tonight, is for soldiers who are less fortunate than him that have gotten wounded and still have a family and children that they are living with and are a part of their family. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from this little video, a very touching one for sure, and we're now going to be moving on into the frontline news itself, starting off in the northeastern area and moving our way into Bakhmut, where most of the news is tonight, and then on down to the Donetsk region, where we didn't see a lot of frontline activity, and on to the southern front, where we hear that there is a little bit of trouble brewing up down there, but of course we'll be saving that for a little bit later. Before we get into all of this, though, I don't know about y'all, but I feel like tonight it is more deserving than ever to call out all of the top donors that have helped this fundraiser to keep on running, because it's absolutely unbelievable how far we've gotten in just 40 minutes. We've raised $16,390 in 40 minutes since this stream began. And I've got to thank every single one of y'all, even the people that we cannot call out, because there are so many of y'all who've sent in support tonight that have helped this fundraiser to get to where it is. Y'all are what makes the Lee Spring Army as special and exceptional as it is. We don't care about YouTube coverage. We don't care about feeling like little generals inside of our houses. We are here to help save lives. And that's what the Lee Spring Army has been doing ever since the first fundraiser we ever ran on March 10th of last year. And we've been doing that for a year and a month to this day, continuously helping to raise funds to save Ukrainian lives. And at this moment right now, adding everything together, we are around $917,000 raised in support of Ukraine. We are we are just a little over $80,000 away from reaching the $1 million mark in helping to save lives in Ukraine through all of our YouTube fundraisers. And it's unbelievable to think that we've been getting this far, this quickly, and here tonight, we're watching it once again go down as we're racing our way towards $17,000 and making our way towards that $1 million mark, probably within the next few weeks. And so with that, Matthew, could you call out all of the top donors for tonight's fundraiser?
All right, and we have a whole bunch tonight, so bear with me. It's going to be a long list. But up first, I want to call out one that I haven't put in the spreadsheet yet. I just saw it come in from Gene Kustra and also BCBCR. Gene put in 100 Canadian and BCBCR put in a $150 donation. So big thanks to you two for that. And also, we have to return to those massive donations by none other than Mark, General of the LSA. He threw in an $8,000, a $5,500, and a $2,000 donation. So Mark is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $13,000 or $14,000 tonight, all on his own. So he's absolutely carried it tonight. So once again, big thanks to you, Mark, for that, and we really do appreciate it. That is extremely generous. I also want to call out a $750 from DCC Prime 1, also very generous. Then we have a $200 from Retail Mix USA, and then several $100 donations. The first one is from Panama Floyd. Then we have one from Malachite. Then we have one from Magic Sky Girl, Hal Rose, Rad Doctor, Activista, BC Skyman, Cindy Mitchell, Avir Anthony, and BC Skyman yet again. Then we have a 69 from, of course, Psyops, and nice.
Nice.
And then we have a 50 from John Webster, John Gamber, Trister1, Richard Bell, Mike G, Super Action General, and I think it's Sturmeyer and Dad Good. And also to everyone else who we weren't able to call out, big thanks to you as well. We're up to $16,845. So we blew past every single goal tonight, including the one that's currently running. So big thanks to you all.
And I've got to say, it is unbelievable to think that we've gotten to nearly $17,000 right now. We're only around, at least from what my phone is showing, $150 away from $17,000. And I got to thank everyone once again, especially Mark tonight, who has sent in more money. He sent in more in fundraisers tonight than I've been able to fundraise myself personally in donations over the course of the entire war. And that is unbelievable to think that great people, like every single one of y'all who's thrown in even just $5, all the way up to Mark, who's thrown in $13,000. It's unbelievable to think that the entire Lee Spring Army is made up of exceptional, kind-hearted people like y'all who have helped the Ukrainians to keep on living and to keep on surviving. And I believe we just passed, and we did it, we just passed the $17,000 mark. We're now at $17,135.
And shout out to Derek CZ who put in a 125, and also Frank Albrecht who put in a 160 NOK.
That is a Norwegian kroner. But with that, thank you all so much once again, and hopefully we can continue to race on our way as the Lee Spring Army on up towards the $1 million mark in funds given in support to nonprofits that are helping to save lives in Ukraine. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from all of the call them out, and we're now going to be moving on into our polls, because Matthew's been throwing up, of course, as usual, amazing polls, and I want to make sure we are able to hear them out and weigh in on them all as the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and for our very first poll, it says Ukraine says the decision to supply Ukraine with F-16s will be made at the next Ramstein meeting. And what are your thoughts? 57% said it's probably going to be a yes, 25% said it's going to be another maybe, 9% said it's probably going to be no, and 9% were unsure. And on this one, I have to say that for Ukraine to be coming out and making a big point to say that the Ramstein meeting, a decision is going to be made, it sounds like maybe a little optimistic. Hopefully it is. I'm going to have to go with maybe it's going to be another if, maybe like, they're going to have to do some more training or another holdup of some sort, but I'm going to hold out hope. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, if they're bringing it up like that, they may have gotten some information that the next Ramstein meeting will actually state that they are giving F-16s to Ukraine, although we have heard definitively up until now that F-16s are off the menu. It may be that they're now putting them on the menu, and the Ukrainians will be able to munch down on these delicious F-16s and put them into their Air Force. We do know that their pilots have received training for the F-16s, and those pilots have completed that training and returned back to Ukraine, so it may be that right now is the prime time to get those F-16s into Ukraine, so that way they can begin to use them. And then we'll also get to see, much like we've seen every other Western weapon dominate on the battlefield, how well does an F-16 do when paired up against primitive Russians that are using AKs and spades? And so with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well. And we are on to the next poll.
And also, I see a bunch of people asking, when is the next Ramstein meeting? And I really don't know, so maybe the Enforcer will look that up real quick.
Let's see. Yeah, let's pull that up, because I don't know when it is. When is the next Ramstein meeting? Let's see here. That would be to be decided. It looks...
Oh, they don't even know yet.
let's see. They said visit Sweden, meeting at Ramstein, but that's on the 14th, so that means it would have already happened, but it has not happened yet. So we don't really know. It's sometime in the future, though. We'll say that probably within the next few weeks, but I can't really give any guarantees since they haven't even put down a hard date. And so with that, I hope that...
So basically, it's since a date hadn't even been set, it's still just a maybe.
Yeah, it's kind of a maybe right now. I guess that is the best way to put it. And so with that, I hope we addressed that question the best we can, which there is no answer to it right now. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next poll says, will the U.S. military exercises conducted around the world deter foreign adversaries? 45% said yes, they are a great deterrent. 9% said unsure. 24% said it might. And 21% said no, it won't affect our adversaries. And I'm going to say it might. I don't think that the exercises necessarily prove anything that the adversaries already didn't know. It kind of lets them have a front row seat to what could happen. But then again, some of our adversaries really aren't using logic at this point, and they're running on their own emotions. For example, Putin invading Ukraine, that made absolutely no sense whatsoever, but he did it anyway because apparently he's just flat out evil. But Enforcer, what say you?
Now, could you reread that poll prompt for me again real quick? Reread the line.
It says, will the U.S. military exercises conducted around the world deter foreign adversaries?
No, not quite. We've seen that it didn't work with the Russians, and they went ahead and did their thing. I would say that it isn't. But one thing that it does show, and it always reminds these people, is what they're going to be going up against if they ever try and go against the United States toe-to-toe. And no matter how much people want to insist that the United States is on the back-trodden foot compared to other countries around the world, the United States is still the preeminent, largest military superpower in the world. It's also the largest economy in the world, so it actually has the ability to back up that firepower. And there is really, right now still, there is really nobody out there who can compete with the United States in terms of size and ability of their military. Not even the Chinese, which a lot of people are now moving to say, oh, they could take on the United States and win. Because we used to say that about the Russians. And then we saw them fight Ukraine. And so everyone just kind of politely acted like no one ever said that. And now they're moving on and saying that about China, which I still don't think is the case. But it is always also important to conduct these drills because it gives our forces a little bit of an idea of how these things actually work in practice in large scale. And it also allows the generals and higher-up commanders to get an idea of how there could be limitations when certain obstacles are reached, or there may be problems in the actual conducting and execution of the battle plans that require them to change their way of thinking, or maybe new ways that they can innovate to try and fight these battles a little bit better. A lot of war games and training really revolves around trying to get out the best doctrine possible and see how new technologies could be implemented. And that's really why a lot of war games are played. And as far as it goes for the lower enlisted, it's really for the lower enlisted to understand what their role in the battlefield is, and how do they actually conduct that, without actually being shot at. So that also plays a huge part in training in the United States, and also making sure that our military never loses sight and focus on how to actually fight a war, which is something the Chinese have not done since about 1980. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, and at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next poll.
All right, and the last poll says South Korea fired warning shots at a North Korea patrol after crossing their maritime border. And what are your thoughts? 72% said that's good, protect allied waters. 4% said unsure. 21% said got to do what you got to do, and 3% said North Korea and South Korea war is looming. And I'm with these 72%. I think that all countries should protect their waters and also their land completely. I don't think that they should back off that one bit. And I think South Korea made the right decision. And firing warning shots is definitely a pretty bold thing to do, and I definitely stand behind it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say the same thing. I believe that national waters and national airspace should always be protected by every single country. That is a part of their right as a sovereign power. And so the South Koreans are completely within the right to turn back North Korean ships past the boundary line and back into North Korean waters. It's pretty silly that some people always sit there and go, oh, that's kind of an overpowered response, because it isn't. It's defending what's a part of your country, and I think that's a very important thing for every single nation on Earth to do, is to defend their sovereignty. And North Korean ships being able to make their way down into South Korean waters is violating their sovereignty. One thing I would say that I was incredibly enraged to hear about is the million or so snow crabs that just went missing over last year, and nobody knows where they went. But the best guess is that Chinese trawlers made their way up into that area and then just overfished the snow crabs, because the Chinese don't put any limitations on how much their, I guess you could say, fisheries and fishing fleets can overfish. So now the snow crabs are, everyone's going, oh, well, now the snow crabs are going to be a little underpopulated, so the price is going to go up, and we're also going to have to put even more limitations on how many snow crabs can U.S. Fishermen, fish. And I think that's outrageous, and that's one thing that we should also protect. Some people are going, it's just snow crabs, but it's snow crabs today, and then it's everything else tomorrow. Because if they're going to do it to snow crabs, they'll do it to just about anything else that we have that they're able to grab and take. And so you got to protect everything, much like it is like our lives depend on it. And so I completely understand where South Korea is coming from in that situation. And so with that, I hope that does.
In this North Korea situation, I have a feeling that the boat from NK probably just happened to cross the line, probably because they can't navigate worth the crap. They probably just accidentally crossed it. And also, I was reading something earlier that apparently the maritime line or border isn't well defined. So I'm not really sure how far they went over the line. But South Korea still made the right decision nonetheless.
And they mean, well, when they say it isn't really well defined, it's because the South Koreans and the North Koreans are always arguing about where the line is. On Google Earth, they actually show the boundary line to be right here, and that is what it's supposed to be. But the North Koreans say, no, it goes further down. It goes through here. And then the South Koreans go, no, it goes up here. But the actual real line is somewhere around here. So the general rule of thumb is just to avoid the area in general. Otherwise, you might get into some kind of an engagement. But nothing beats the one time a North Korean submarine went through this area trying to conduct a sabotage mission on South Korea, and it got stuck in the fishing net of a South Korean trawler, which I have told the story before. I think you may remember it, Matthew. The captain of the North Korean submarine just killed everyone in the submarine, including himself.
Yes.
And then they pulled the submarine up. We're like, what the hell? And just saw absolute nightmare fuel inside the sub. But anyways, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, South Korea has to be very serious with dealing with the North Korean issue, because back in the day, during, I guess you could say, the times that was much more tense in between North and South Korea, the North Koreans would actually send in sabotage groups and assassin groups into South Korea by the little midget subs, and they would send them down into the area of Incheon, and then they'd unload, and they'd go and try and assassinate the president or something similar. So they're very serious about trying to protect this area, because that's usually where the North Koreans historically would come through. So with that, I hope that does address that poll fairly well, and also give a little bit of additional background history to it. And with that, we are on to the next poll.
And that was our last poll.
No way.
But real quick, before we move on to our questions, I want to call out Arnie YDT for putting in a $135 donation to the fundraiser, well as Rustin Rott, who put in a $50. And we're up to $423 on the fundraiser.
And I gotta say, that is unbelievable. I had to look over that. I was like, wait a minute, is it really? It's $17,423 raised. Unbelievable. And I gotta thank y'all once again for getting us up to this point. Unbelievable. And I gotta thank Arnie Yunt also for throwing in $135. Y'all are incredibly kind, overly kind with these fundraisers. And I gotta thank y'all so much once again for helping to save those lives. Because I don't think being overly kind, especially when you're helping to rehabilitate wounded soldiers, is everything. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are now going to be moving on into those questions. And so, what do we got for them questions?
All right, and guess what? Since Mark, General of the LSA, has been so generous tonight, he's going to be the first question of the night. He says, Enforcer, can you comment about the Leopards of Leopard 1 tanks? Over 100 are expected to be in Ukraine soon, should be able to be a T-55.
That is true. There is supposed to be more than 100 Leopards. It appears to be a joint effort in between Denmark and the Netherlands to purchase up old Leopards, fit them out for service, and then send them on into Ukraine. And these are all, from what we understand, Leopard 1A5s, which are the most advanced and modern version of the Leopard 1. I'll actually try and find an exact picture of a Leopard 1A5 somewhere on here. Here we go. This is Kraus Maffei Wegman's website. They're the ones who actually only accept essential cookies. But here is a Leopard 1A5. And we can see the success story down here, just in case you aren't sold on it. And also, this one's really cool. This is actually called a C2A1 Mexus. And it's just a very interesting upgrade of the Leopard 1. Let me see if I can actually pull one up, C2A1 Mexus. There's, of course, a War Thunder model. You know, in case you play War Thunder, it is there. But let me go and try and find the real picture of it like we saw on... There we go. Here's the C2 main battle tank. I forgot what country actually... Actually, these are Canadian. These are Canadian Leopard 1s that have been heavily upgraded with armor packages, and they hardly look like a Leopard 1 anymore, but sadly the Ukrainians won't be getting these. They'll just be getting the Leopard 1A5s. It is a fairly good tank. The armor is thin, however. A little bit thinner than a T-55, but when you're talking about modern munitions and the munitions that both of these tanks will be firing at each other, the difference in armor is completely non sequitur. It doesn't even really change anything because a Leopard 1A5 shell would punch through T-54 and Leopard 1 armor about the same. So would a T-54 shell. It would also punch through its own armor and a Leopard 1's armor with relative ease. The thing, though, with a T-54 or a T-55 having more armor is that armor is actually weighing it down a little bit compared to the Leopard 1. Because, once again, if the armor doesn't really mean anything, what's the point of having any? And that's what the Leopard 1 emphasizes. The Leopard 1 also, from what we understand, has better optical systems, better infrared, it has better crew ergonomics. It is... I guess you could say easier to maintain from what we understand because there has been a continuous use of Leopard 1A5s around the world, and there's been a continuous production of spare parts for them, and there's also just loads of them sitting around right now, so it's not hard to find parts for them at all on mostly operational tanks, which is also a huge plus. And so this thing could definitely outdo a T-54 or a T-55 on the field. However, if it does get hit, even by an RPG-7, this thing will probably begin to brew up because there really is nothing protecting this tank from anything rather than small arms fire. But then again, a T-54 or a T-55 could also get blown up with an RPG-7. So, you know, it's kind of like trying to make a downside where there really is none when you're comparing it directly to a T-54. So this thing could certainly outdo a T-54 or a T-55 in every single way, especially in maneuverability. The Leopard 1 is far more maneuverable than a T-54 or a T-55 ever has been. Let's see, and then Mark said, and versus the T-72B3. That one would be a little bit questionable to me because I feel as long as the Leopard 1 gets off the first shot, that first shot will cause the T-72B3 crew to bail. Even if the tank isn't really heavily damaged or even lightly damaged, the crew will most likely bail if their tank is hit first. So it really matters in that kind of situation if the Leopard can get off the first shot. The T-72B3 does have optic systems that I would say are better than what you'll find on a Leopard 1A5. So that will probably give it an upper hand in being able to find the Leopard and hit it first if it is ever seen. So I would say it certainly could go up against a T-54 or a T-55, it could most likely go up against a T-72B with really no major issue. But once you start getting into the category of tanks that have advanced infrared and night vision, and I guess you could say slightly increased armor protection, like a T-72B3 or a T-80U or a T-80BVM or a T-90M or a T-90A, I feel like that's where the Leopard 1 will begin to be outclassed. But once again, we have to remember that the Russians don't have an army made up of nothing but T-72B3s in their best. Most of their army is using T-62Ms and T-55s at this point. And so the Leopard 1 could go up against both of those with no problem whatsoever. It would just be in those rare instances where a T-72B3 is on the field, this thing would be outclassed. And I believe at that point, once the Ukrainians realize wherever Russian advanced armor is, they would probably start to roll in the Leopard 2s onto the battlefield to go directly against those, because the Leopard 2s do outclass every single modern Russian main battle tank there is on the field. So with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well, Mark, and a really good one as well. And with that, y'all know what we're doing. We're moving on to the next one, and I hope we answered that as best we could.
Indeed. And also, big shout out to RepoMan46. He put in a $150 donation. Very generous. And thank you so much, RepoMan, for supporting tonight's fundraiser. And our next question goes to Wim De Jong, who says, I heard a rumor that Russia has developed a new and innovative way of transporting the wounded. And what are your thoughts about that?
I've heard that the new and innovative way is leaving them there and waiting for the Ukrainians to move them.
Or the horse ambulance.
Yeah, or a horse ambulance. They just load them onto the back of a horse like a bandit in the Wild West and go, yeah! And that horse goes running off with a wounded guy tied to the back. But I would say I have not heard of a new and innovative way for them to transport the wounded rather than the Ukrainians doing it for them. So I guess that's the innovative way, if it is. But still, I hope that does address that question fairly well. And we are on to the next one. Also, Manny, I saw someone say they're usually to Bakhmut by this point. No, we are not. Usually the question segment ends around 10:10 local time, and it's only 10:03. Hold your horses, man. But anyways, with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we'll be moving on into the frontline news.
All right, and this one goes to Maria Eastwood, who says, has anyone heard of the mood of the EU or NATO after the comments of Macron about not following the US and China war?
It appears that a lot of people were actually very unhappy with that statement. Quite a shocker, if you ask me. Everyone in the European Union has come out. A lot of Germans have come out and said, no, that's not true. We're fine with being friends with America, because who else would we be friends with? A lot of people from the National Assembly, and of course, when I say this, we're not trying to get into the political differences there is in France, but a lot of people came out from the National Assembly, which is France's version of a Congress, which does not hold as equal power as the president. The president in France actually holds largely supreme power over the country and actually makes all of the shots. The National Assembly is just kind of there as an advisory body, but a lot of them came out and said, no, that's not the case. That's not true. And then, of course, the British strongly detested that, but they're not a part of the European Union anymore. So they're more so just out there on their own doing their own thing. And pretty much everyone that I could think of, and I remember saying anything about it, came out with disdain about Macron's remarks. And so it looks like, once again, he's on his own saying the stupid stuff he says. That's not really shocking. And also, you give this guy just a little bit of a taste of what communist grandeur looks like in China, and he just dives right into the sauce, gets lost in it. What a loser, really. I mean, to sit over there and have some trinkets put in front of your face and have the red carpet rolled out in China, and he just sits there and goes, you know what? I don't think we need to be friends with America anymore. It's like, what the hell is wrong with you? No one agrees. Everyone treated him like it was crazy, and it's a good thing they did, because that was the craziest thing I've ever heard. I've not actually heard anyone come out in his defense saying, oh, he has a point. I haven't heard anyone say that anywhere. He was just completely on his own with that dumb idea. So with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well. Do you have anything to add to it, Matthew?
No, just basically the same thing you said. It's not good to turn on your allies, especially after accepting so much support from them. And, honestly, I've kind of seen some folks in the EU kind of agree with Macron to an extent, but I think overwhelmingly, I think most are against it. I know the US is definitely against it because they're directly backstabbing us.
Yeah, and I would say I'm very, very, and I have to make this very clear, displeased with what Macron said about being a vassal of the United States. No one is a vassal of the United States. The French were supported by the United States and Britain in the Second World War to reclaim their country. What about that is being a vassal? And even after they had been defeated in their own home country, we still allowed their generals the same say in strategic decision-making as British generals and American generals. You know, of course, Eisenhower was the one in the European theater making the final calls, but they still were given a say in the process, much like the British were and American generals were as well. So I don't understand why in the hell he's acting like the French were just forced to be a vassal of the United States. That's never been the case, because the French have shown throughout history they will do their own thing, like with the Suez Crisis, which we stepped in and stopped, like in French Indochina, where we had to come in and try and clean up the pieces, and that's how we got involved in Vietnam. They still have colonies, for the large part, in the Ivory Coast, and we really let them get away with that, although the modern Western stance is to be anti-colonial. And they still do that, and we don't really say anything about it. And they've been given all this leeway and all this room to do whatever they want and really go any direction they want. And then he's going to sit there and say that they're a vassal of the United States, which is outrageous and ridiculous. I mean, like, hell, if they were...
Go ahead.
If they were a vassal of the United States, then why in the hell would we have allowed them to ever create the European Union? Because that could have been viewed as a direct threat to our power, yet we still let them do it, and they were the literal founding member and brought Germany in, and then the rest was history. But go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, another thing, saw a crafty Appy point out. He said Macron's timing of the comments are super weird too. And it really is. Like, all these other countries like Russia and China are teaming up right now to try to usurp the U.S., I guess you could say, authority in the world as a global superpower, and Macron is jumping right in while all that stuff's heating up, which is not good timing. Also, if they're really a true ally, why wouldn't they address that in private instead of coming out and trying to basically defame the U.S. after all we've done for France? It seems really messed up.
Yeah, and it's messed up in my opinion. And I saw someone say something like, "Oh yes, it's good you allowed it." I mean, well, yeah, we allowed it. I mean, you know, because the United States could have stepped in and completely and absolutely intervened, like they did in the Suez Crisis, where the British and the French teamed up to try and take the Suez back from the Egyptians. And then we stepped in and said, "Hey, that's wrong." And then they just had to back off. We allowed them to do whatever. If they were a vassal, they would only do what they said we wanted them to do. I mean, hell, the French were strongly against going into Iraq when we invaded Iraq in 2003. They were completely fine to say that. It is a free world over here. You know, the United States isn't running a world like China or Russia does, where you have to agree with them or you hit the highway. So I don't know why in the hell he would say something that is completely misrepresentative of that. And the truth is that we run such an unvassal-like world, you know, in the West, that they could go to the Chinese and we probably wouldn't do anything about it, really, rather than put up a protest. You know, and that just disproves his argument right there. But then, you know, if he does that, then he'll just say, "Oh, we've broken the vassalship and America is weak," or whatever, you know, because no one ever sits there and goes, well, maybe they weren't that bad of a people because they just let us do what we want. And then, you know, we're weak if we allow them to do what we want. And then if we go in there and stop them somehow, some way, then we're also the bad guys too. It's kind of a damned if we do, damned if we don't kind of situation, but still poor remarks, tasteless remarks, really. And so with that, I hope we address that fairly well, and we are now going to be moving out of the question segment and on into the Northeastern Frontline News. And we actually have had a map update today, as we're going to be going through each and every part of the front lines over the past 24 hours, and of course we can see no frontline developments here to speak of. Quite normal in the Northeast. But near the Kuzmivka area, we saw that some Ukrainian tankers got very lucky and barely survived a kamikaze drone striking directly onto their vehicle. We can also see this is a T-80BV, which tells us that the Ukrainians captured this from the Russians and started using it against them. When you see the kamikaze drone come in and hit the tank, and it appears that it has not really done much damage rather than cause a small fire on some flammable material on the external part of the tank. All the hatches were closed, so the fire is most likely not going to spread to the inside, and at worst, it was detract. But very lucky for the Ukrainian crew that they had their hatches closed, because otherwise that may have been a little messy. We're now going to be moving on from that clip near the Kuzmivka area and further on down the line towards the direction of Kremenna, where we saw that the Ukrainian 25th Brigade has also been hitting the Russians quite heavily today. And we hear some opera music playing. I don't know what that is. And we can also see
recorded on an old-fashioned microphone.
Yeah, and we can also see Bumblebee from the Transformers up there as the Ukrainians start raining down the fire on the Russians on this road. We now see one of the BMPs smoking and the truck behind it just sitting there. And we see them all going, "Oh, блядь, this is not good. We're caught in open, блядь." We now see the BMP is still smoking. We see some Russians moving around on the truck as another round hits in front of them, and it's probably going to put them into a little bit more of a panic. We can now see the BMP is on fire and spreading out its contents across the field. And we can see that the fire has now engulfed the truck, and the Russian crew is nowhere to be seen. It appears they've run off for literally the hills. You can see the BMP burning on down into a fine crisp. It burns down better than Kingsford charcoal, which is quite impressive. Kingsford does burn quite nicely. We're not sponsored by them or anything, but, you know, not a bad charcoal. But we can see that that BMP is done for, and also they just left the supply truck behind with it. And I guess you could say, Matthew, that they're giving us a lot of smoke on this one, where this little special military operation went well for the Russians or not. But, you know, I guess they have a right to blow smoke as much as they want, as long as this thing is gone by the end of the day. With that, we're now going to be moving on from the area of Kremenna and further on down the line towards the direction of Orivka, where we saw the 45th Brigade using a javelin to destroy a Russian vehicle. See the Ukrainian soldier moving up. There is music. It is a very copyrighted song as well. We can see the guy carrying the javelin behind him. All of them moving up. And now I see them moving by a Lada with a Z on it. Looks like that Lada didn't survive for long. We can now see the Ukrainian firing the javelin from a tower.
I thought that tower had some kind of like launcher built into it.
Yeah, I thought it did for a second. I was like, oh my god,
that's so cool.
We now see the Ukrainians continuing to move up through the rubble and debris of a small village. And that's the end of the clip. Sadly, we didn't get to see where that javelin missile hit or what it did, but it was really cool to see that that guy fired it from the tower, because he had Matthew and me fooled. I also thought it was the tower firing the missile and not a guy. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that interesting clip near Orivka and on down into the Bakhmut area itself. And we've been seeing some interesting things occurring over in Bakhmut over the past few hours. And so moving into the past 24 hours and showing all the 15th to the 16th, we have seen that Ukrainian front lines have not moved back any farther, and it appears that no man's land has been stabilized for the moment. However, we do see that Russian forces in the southern end of the city right here have been able to advance a few more city blocks, also taking a small bridge crossing a creek, and they're now moving up towards the railroad line right here. The railway station is still over here, and is currently being held by the Ukrainian forces, from what we understand, with the Russians directly assaulting across the rail yard and onto the station itself. The fighting has been so intense, we're not going to get into direct OPSEC here, but it's been so intense that today one of the largest frontline developments at the train station was that the Ukrainians were able to capture a single elevator shaft inside of the train station building itself. That's how heavy the fighting is there, and that's how little of a movement there is that capturing an elevator shaft in one part of the train station is being considered massive news. And believe it or not, from what we saw, the Russians controlled the one literally right over from it. So we don't know how that's working right now, but that's the information we heard. Not getting into much more detail than that, but that's how heavy the fighting has been. And so we're probably not going to be seeing a lot of frontline developments over the next 2 days in that specific area, because the Ukrainians and the Russians are firing at each other point blank inside of the building, with the Russians trying to pour into the building, the Ukrainians trying to hold the building, and both are trying to see which one will get pushed out or give up first, the Ukrainians or the Russians. Literally Stalingrad in a way right there, talking about people fighting for elevator shafts. But anyways, we're now going to be moving on into the frontline news itself. Of course, no frontline developments that we could see over the past 24 hours, rather than that one movement through no man's land in the southern end of Bakhmut. And in the northeastern area, we saw near Krasnopolivka, some Ukrainians sniping the Russians at night. When you see them lining up the rifle, when you see a Russian right out there, he's just on his way.
Добывай, братан.
Oh, he took nap.
And he gone.
What?
And he gone.
Oh, I thought you said something more than that. All I heard was Annie. Oh, I was like, what? But anyways, we're now going to be moving on from this little clip. You can see that this guy is, of course, sleeping out there, and as they say in the memes, I'm a mirror. And we're now going to be moving on from this clip and further on down the line and towards the area of Berkivka, where we saw some Russian POWs have been taken, more specifically just one. But here's the clip.
Блядь, мобилизуют и все, либо тюрьма, либо сюда. Много таких, кто не хочет воевать. Да.
Посадці, підери ще є чи нема?
Заставляют просто. Все.
Та їх двоє було сьогодні. Їх ж двоє було.
Там рюкзак.
Колега де твій?
When you see them interrogating the prisoner, and if any of y'all want to steal this man's drip, I can tell y'all exactly how. Rain boots from Walmart, $40. The Gorka 5 uniform, Gorka 5 uniform for sale. I think we could probably steal his drip. Yep, there we go. We got a Gorka 5 right here, $220. Or you can get it used. You can get one used on eBay. I have a feeling that this one probably came from not really a suitable place, but $120. Or you could also get a brand new one from AliExpress for only $138.59.
That's where they're getting them from, I guarantee you.
Yeah, and so stealing this man's drip will cost you about $170. And also another interesting thing about this, Matthew, is that to get a Gorka 5 like this one here that was used, or even this one, because these are the ones that the Russian military are probably using, this most likely means that a corrupt Russian quartermaster just started gathering up boxes of Gorka 5 uniforms that are in some storeroom and just took them with him and then shipped them out to be sold to someone for a pretty cheap price so he could make a couple of bucks. So these uniforms being for sale on the internet is pretty much depriving the Russians of these uniforms for the large part. That's the same with MREs as well.
I bet.
So let's see. One second. Russian MRE for sale. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. $60. It looks like there's still some quartermasters out there are still bringing in the hot juice. They got the MREs for sale out here. These are not Russian ones. This one is. These are the ones you would actually see on the front lines in Ukraine. And just remember, whenever there's a demand for these MREs, that means that there is a Russian quartermaster out there who's making the decision that he would rather let his troops starve and get a few bucks than to help those soldiers be fed with these MREs. So just always keep that in mind. Whenever you see these kinds of things on eBay, always smile a little bit, because that's one Russian soldier that's probably getting hungry enough that he's thinking about surrendering. And so with that,
I wonder who in the world's buying those, because it's not like they're, highly sought after or something.
I have no idea. I would never buy a Russian MRE, because who the hell knows like what kind of food quality is really in that thing. I wonder if you can get a I think these are just the U.S. military surplus. Sure, these things are being taken out of supply yard somewhere, and right now there's some guy who's a logistician walking through it. What? Where did the pallet go? And it's right here on Amazon.com. But anyways, we're now going to be moving on from. Well, actually, we're going to let this video round out. But now y'all know his drip is only $170.
Там ще один рядом, метрів 5. Підожди, откуда виходив? Метрів 5 там рядом щось ще.
Мы шли на даче.
Откуда?
Нас отстрелили.
And that's the end of the clip, but another Russian prisoner has been captured, and this is not the first video we have from today. Moving even further on down into the city and into the northern area, we saw some Ukrainian soldiers in action. And so, of course, without further ado, here's the clip. Here, a firefight going on as this Ukrainian soldier is having to reassemble his AK. And they're just getting around. Okay, now I have to give this guy a lot of credit. He put that AK together a lot faster than I have ever been able to put together an AK. Probably because I haven't taken it apart and put it back together a lot. But that was actually pretty impressive, because I have never been able to do that. You see their friends still firing at the Russians. And backing up. And we see they're all just having a fun time. And now when you see him getting back down after the Russians start returning fire. But I like how this guy, Matthew, literally did like a 360 lay down the lead right here.
He did
Just
too.
just
He's got a
imagine.
suppressor on it too.
Yeah, just imagine getting styled on though by this guy. You just see a Ukrainian soldier's head pop up looking away from you. He does a 180 and then just lays into you full auto. It's like, man, they're sitting there going, "We're going up against super soldier split. These guys are too good." Because look how quickly he did that. I mean, like, he went off. He just like spun around like a little ballerina and then just went off. Let's watch that again. Love it.
Man's got that child's playground like butt pad too.
Yeah, I like it. I like the drip. I don't know how to steal this guy's drip. The Gorka suit was pretty cheap, and I've seen those before. Don't know about these uniforms, however. But with that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip, and I'll be showing y'all this one right here, at least the title. The title of this one is Wagner Bodies Litter the Street. You can see that I put in all caps to remind myself this is not for show, which means that it's not for this show. The reason why is because it is pretty graphic. It shows loads of bodies in the street, and they're all Wagner, like at least a dozen of them just in one small area that you could see from outside of a cellar. The reason why I wanted to include this tonight is because we have been saying that the Battle of Bakhmut has been a bloodbath for the Wagner unit. And there's people online, you know, of course, usually pro-Russian, you know, you can't really argue with them anyways because it doesn't matter what you say, they still won't agree with you or have any kind of sense in the matter. But they're always going, you know, these casualty reports are really high, but where are these guys really dying? I've never seen a single Russian die. If you watch this video, you'll see at least a dozen of them in like one small quarter of an intersection that are just lying there. And the whole city's like that. Like when they pan out, you can see it going on and on and on. And the whole city is like that from what we can tell wherever the Wagner's been. So we can't show it, but if you do want to see it, I'll show y'all this. This is a neat tip and trick. I'll show y'all some channel hacks here, which is a flash word. There we go. And so I'll whip this thing over onto the screen. And this is our stream, actually what y'all are seeing right now. So streamception is about to happen. But if you scroll down here, you can see that there are 5,543 people watching. And this stream's been live for 82 minutes. And you can click show more. And when you click show more, you can also see the fundraiser over here if you're on desktop, which is really cool. But down here, you can see our Twitter. You can go join that Twitter. We always have a United 24 link that'll take you directly to the United 24 website, which is the only thing that we have approved to support on this channel that is not a YouTube Give fundraiser. The only thing ever, and so we always keep a link there for it. And then down here at the bottom is the Day 417 map, which you can click, and you literally get the map I'm using on stream. Like this one right here. You see the link how it popped up? I'm going to go to this one, and if I zoom out, it is the exact same map. You can zoom in on each little link. You can go click on them, and you can go and watch every single video, clip, or picture that we've ever put up on the news on this map. It's made every single day on this channel, so if you're here watching any given night, you can always click on the link in the description and always follow along with me, or you can even go at your own pace and check out links that you find interesting. Like if you're only caring about the area of Zaporizhia, you can go down to that part of the front line and check out all of the clips that we have in the Zaporizhia area. Also, y'all can see that 6,047 people have viewed this map as of the beginning of this week. It's only been 3 days and 6,000 people have clicked on the link and checked out all the video clips we have there. So that's actually how this works. And also, since I'm here, I wonder if I can vote on a poll. It doesn't allow me to vote on polls.
Nope.
Yeah, it doesn't allow me to vote on polls. That's kind of lame. But anyways, I hope that explains where y'all can go and find that little link, because I usually don't do stuff like this because it does take a little bit of additional time to put down that marker and also look at the video to figure out what it's about. But I did it tonight just to show folks, just in case you're all wondering, what does it really look like when we take the PG filter off of war footage? And that's what it looks like out there. So with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip where we saw the prototype tank that we've been talking about in the title and the thumbnail being spotted in Bakhmut. This thing is called a BMPV-64. And without further ado, here's the clip of it in action. There are only 2 of these things in existence, and you can actually see it right there. That's it.
And what's unique about this one?
So what's unique about it is that there's only 2 of these things in existence. And let me pull up the BMPV-64, and I'll show you all a better picture of one. So here's tanknutdave.com. We'll just go here real quick. This is what the... Whoa, hey, easy now. You're seeing a little bit too much there. But let's see. This is not the one, actually. The other one was like a T-64 just straight up. Let me go to Google Images here, and we'll try.
Oh, there it is. Military Today. It was the third link down.
Third link. This one?
Yeah, I think that's it.
No, that's not it. That's not the one. Oh, discretion
What
is
in the
advised.
world?
Whoa, hey,
what are these
easy.
ads, man?
I don't know.
What are your search results like recommending?
I don't know, but then I get Vistaprint. Like, it's the most confusing crap. It's like, I've never even looked at printing services. Why am I getting Vistaprint? Why am I also getting that? I don't know. Anyways, we're going to be moving on from that. And I'm going to be trying to find y'all a real picture of this BMPV 64 that we saw. But I'm not finding any because they all don't... Here it is. That's the one right there. And you can see that it looks like they have the base of the turret there. But that's about it. They have a 14.7 millimeter gun on top of it. And then that's all there is. It's just a large amount of explosive reactive armor. And it is also explained to be an APC. So apparently this thing can carry infantry. We can clearly tell that this one can carry infantry. But that is largely just a BMP-2 with a decent amount of upgrades. But I still don't understand, where the hell are the pictures? Like, there's the one from Twitter. And we can see that they actually built a large add-on part to the back where you can carry infantry. And then that begs the question, where the hell is the engine?
Yeah, I wonder.
And so with that, still, very interesting vehicle, very interesting prototype. And with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on down into the center of Bakhmut, where we can see some footage of the ongoing battles in the city. And we're going to have to mute that because I thought that was a siren for a moment.
I did too. I thought it was our sirens.
Yeah, I was sitting there, I was like, is there a tornado coming? But no. But we can see the destruction of the city down there. And we see the destruction of the buildings, fires going on pretty much every single city block. You see right here at the top of a building, pretty decent amount of damage, most likely caused by a tank shell or an artillery shell landing on it. And that's the end of the video clip, but once again giving a very small look at the city of Bakhmut and the heavy damage that is received. We haven't gotten any actual numbers on the level of devastation that Bakhmut has endured, unlike what we did with Mariupol, where we heard that every single building in the city would have to be torn down and rebuilt after the war. We have never gotten a figure like that on the city of Bakhmut, but one would have to assume that it is very close to the entire city being completely destroyed and most likely needing to be rebuilt once the war is over, which is very sad to think about. With that, we're now going to be moving on down into the southern end of Bakhmut, where you also saw some close quarters combat going on in this area. And we hear the Chad music. And we see the Ukrainian soldiers looking around the corner. It looks like he may have lobbed a grenade into the house. They're now moving back a little bit. And we can see the explosion of a grenade and some bricks falling over. And so I think they got him. We now see the Ukrainian firing around the wall. And we can now see the Russians, well, actually the Ukrainians peering around the corner, still firing their AKs. We cannot see the Russians yet, but they must be close nearby with what the Ukrainians are doing. We now see them advancing forward a little bit, near some kind of a green shack.
Oh, it's the outhouse bled.
It is the outhouse bled. I scared myself shitless. The shit is in outhouse bled.
Oh, they've got those nice GoPro, like new versions. I forgot which number they were.
Man, they the Gucci kind. That's all I know. But when you see them looking around the corner, you see them continuing to fire. You see him lobbing a grenade over very gently. That was a very gentle grenade toss. Now
Look at that bundle of sticks.
Oh, wow. Hey, wow.
Oh, no. Oh, take it easy.
Do not ask what the MiG-15's call sign is in NATO. Do not ask. Do not. But anyways, we can see the Ukrainians still looking around the corner after lobbing a good amount of grenades. And someone said, music must be muted by now. No. Nope. You see the Ukrainians firing over into the outhouses. We can see that this is very close quarters combat. We haven't seen the Russians, but with how the Ukrainians are treating the situation, they must be very close nearby. We can actually see some parts of the brick flying off the wall as the Russians try and fire back. We can now see the Ukrainian crossing over. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But a huge credit to the Ukrainian soldiers who continue to fight in the city of Bakhmut under incredibly strenuous conditions like these, and yet hold the Russians back still. We're now going to be moving on into our next bit of news, where we saw the 93rd and Signum hitting the Russians at the same time. I guess you could say this is a bit of a collab, or I never get that right. It's a collaboration. That's what it should be called. But anyways, here is the video.
60-очка летить, ждемо і питаємося крупним планом, общим планом все снять.
But you see the Russians moving in right there.
Підіки йдуть. Ну, родная! Увеличивайся. Вот так, да. О, блядь, давай.
We see a mortar shell landing nearby, and one right on top of them, and we can see them getting hyped up.
Jaga.
Сейчас шеф подавай нахуй. Давай, ще дві. Єбать, пятно нахуй потухло, то... Підери лежать.
And we see it dead on hit. We can actually see one Russian joining Aeroflot, which is the Russian Airlines, and it looks like he got some flight miles. Whoa! Little guy, I mean, he's going places.
Це просто, сука, пиздец. Ёбана в рот. Там прямое попадание мочило полнейшее.
I don't know what they're saying.
They
Did
said
you see him go flying, Bliat?
they said something like he's an idiot because pizdich means like idiot or dip, like dipshit, things like that. It's like the go-to word for that. But still, when orcs fly, and we saw one fly, so I guess the war's over. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from this clip in the southern end of the city of Bakhmut and on down behind the lines where we saw the evacuations of Bakhmut still continuing. And so, here's the clip.
Давайте, пацаны, поспешим.
That's trippy.
Пока машина целая, чтобы мы успели уехать.
А я боюсь, стреляют везде.
Это вы на эвакуацию?
Я на эвакуацию.
Ну вы что, издеваетесь?
I think
Я
we saw this
специально
one
за вами
yesterday.
приехала, вы боитесь выходить или что? Сколько время вам надо, я спрашиваю?
10 минут.
Все, мы ждем вас там на торце в подвале. Быстро!
Hello?
Вот такие вот звуки сейчас тут. Ну что? Все, они едут, поехали. Я к ним 2 раза ездил. Первый раз не нашел, второй раз нашел. Они сказали, мы не уезжаем. Вот такие вот дела, ребят. Вы жить, я так понял, не хотите, да? Тут сидите.
There's no way. I think we saw this yesterday.
Where in the world? That was a delay.
Well, I mean, it was a delay because you know what I mean. So we're going to be moving on from that clip because I heard the audio playing. I was thinking that is definitely yesterday's clip, and I accidentally brought it into today's news. So we're actually going to be getting rid of that marker and moving on down into the southern area near Ivanivsky, or what we call the highway perimeter, where we saw some Ukrainian soldiers on the line. Pictures of them out there as they're still conducting their activities. You can see this guy here covered in mud. That kind of looks like Matthew and me back in the day when we used to dig ditches and also pressure wash. Your face would look like that.
That's true.
In the next
and your eyes would be red like that, too,
yeah,
from it.
They would be red like that, too. I can almost feel like the pressure washing and the ditch digging coming back. Moving on to the next clip, we can see some Ukrainian soldiers back here enjoying a smoke. We can also see this Ukrainian soldier here walking in front of the camera. Looks like he's posing, perhaps. And we can also see a guy back here with the bandaged hand, and he's also just enjoying a cigarette as well. And the next picture, we can see a cute little puppy. I love that dog.
That dog's hungry.
Man, that thing hungry. Dude, but that thing better watch out, because if Sheba gets a flower bone, she will murder. She will moita.
That's true.
And also, we can see this guy here. It looks like he's carrying maybe, let's see, it's a chaplain, actually. This man is a chaplain, and it appears that he brought some stuff for the Easter service in the trenches. Very nice of them to do that for the soldiers in the trenches, and he's leaving with the doggo. Very cute doggo, by the way. I love that dog. So sweet. And so with that, We're now going to be moving on from this clip and on out of the, I guess you could say, highway perimeter and down towards the canal, where we saw some prisoners coming in to Ukrainian forces after giving up. All of our soldiers keep giving up. So here's the clip.
Хотілося б їх заїбашити, але це те, що ми поміняємо на своїх побратимів.
And you know,
Dang. They got that bag taped like completely around his head.
dude, he's sitting there. They're sitting there going, huh? He says he needs weed. We don't have any of that.
Oh, bliat, I need to eat and I can't breathe either. I need oxygen.
Oxygen. Hey, listen, they never made any rules about that in the Geneva Convention. And also, I saw someone, Matthew, I saw Brian Bush say, "Stop shitting on the job." Listen, man, it's not shitting, it's pissing. All right. When you sit there,
Right.
and you drink that much nitro cold brew before a show every single night, and also drink an entire bottle of water so that way you don't get like toxic shock from the nitro cold brew. Your bladder can only take so much of that for 417 days before it's like, I can't do that anymore for 3 hours. So, I'm sorry, but I have to. And that's why that clip played for so long. You heard it, right? You heard it. Clip that, will you? So with that, we're going to be moving on from the canal video. And Matthew's sitting there going, oh my God. That's it there. We're now moving on down to the Avdiivka area, where we have not seen any frontline advances as of today. And we'll move over the past 24 hours to show, because as far as I recall, there were none. And there have been none. So moving on up into the northern side of Avdiivka, we saw a successful, I guess you could say, assault. This has been marked as NSFW. I didn't think it was
safe for something.
Not safe for work.
Oh.
And I guess in our terms, it is not safe for work because we're working over here. Hey, we're working over here. So sadly, I can't show that one to y'all. I didn't think it was an NSFW when I watched it, but I've seen everything. So I really don't find anything to be NSFW. So, you know, with that, we're going to be moving on from that little clip and on to the one behind the town where we saw some Russian prisoners of war being evacuated. You know, it looks like if you took the blindfold off of this guy, he'd be going, Jimbo! But anyway,
Yeah, he looks like he probably would say something like that. I was about to say something else, but never mind.
probably something like that. But anyways, that's the end of the clip. And nice to see that they're once again adding some more prisoners to the exchange fund. Moving on to the southern end of the town, we also saw some Russian positions being shelled. Oh, I can already hear the music. Alright, now that's just weird sounding, so we're going to mute that. I have a feeling that one's not copyrighted, but we don't ever want to chance it. We can see smoke still billowing off of where that artillery shell hit.
People were saying NSFW means not safe for watching.
Oh, I thought it was not safe for work.
Huh.
Because I remember back when I was running the Discord thing, everyone called it the not safe for work. But, you know, then again, they all committed schisms. So, you know, I don't know how incredible that was. But anyways, with that, that's the end of the clip. And we can see the Russians getting hit at the southern end of Avdiivka out in the country fields. And with that, we're now going to be moving on out of the Battle of Avdiivka. Of course, no front line advances to see there today. And on into the area of Novomikhailivka. Hopefully I got that right, where we can see an accurate drone strike. And so here's the clip.
Shut your...
Oh, all right. We can
Hey,
see
shut your mouth.
Well, you see the bomblet falling. Interestingly enough, and I'll just show it to y'all. Poof. And it looks like that bomblet got a good bit of the squad. And also calls to fire over there.
That was just like those pranks, like, you know, commanders will sometimes, like, throw, like, dummy grenades in the middle of soldiers, like, as a prank, or to, like, test the reflexes, except that was a real one that time.
Man, my commander threw a grenade at me and it blew up? What a sick joke. But anyway.
It's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank.
Oh, dude, pranksters these days will whip out a katana and cut your legs off of the shin, and if you get angry at them, they'll go, chill, bro, chill, it's just a prank. As you're beating them pretty much. But anyways, we're moving on from that little clip and on towards the Volodar area, where we heard something very interesting today. We heard that the Caesars were actually a large part of why the Volodar offensive was stopped. We can actually see a Caesar in operation right there, and according to this little bit of news that was delivered, apparently the Caesars were the artillery pieces being used in the Volodar area that were delivering the vital and deadly firepower that was needed to stop a large amount of the Russian pushes through the fields and towards the town of Avdiivka itself. So it's great to know that the Caesars, provided by the French, were able to help out Ukraine in saving their own country. But of course, we don't want anyone to feel like a vassal, so we largely have to withhold the thanks from France because we want them to feel like big kids. So with that, we're now going to be moving on from the Volodar area and on down to the area of Malnivka, where we saw a Gyansen B destroyed. Let's check it out. That kind of sounds like bouncing out, but anyways, we can see the Gyansen being hit right down there. Sadly, we didn't really see the direct impact, but we do see the subsequent fire and smoke coming off of the piece. And we see the artillery burning and exploding. And we also
like how they recorded this with Bondi cam, like the gamers do.
Yeah. Mom, clip it. I got a Gyansen. And we can see the Gyansen smoking. And let's hear the corporate 1970s music. Very nice. Here in this office, you can expect a happy and go-lucky environment. Bandy cut. Easy video cutter and joiner. www.bandicut.com.
And then they have InShot down there on the right. It's like, which one is it? InShot or Bondi cut?
Dude, next thing you know, this will be uploaded on MLG. Yeah. But anyways, with that, we got to see a Gyansen B blow up, which is not that bad, and I have to go back and see what that bot said. Oh, whoa. Okay, whoa, that's a little far out there. Far out, bro. But anyways, we're now moving on into the Zaporizhia area and behind the lines, where we saw that a prisoner of war exchange occurred today. We heard that 130 Ukrainian soldiers have been exchanged, including 92 of the regular army, 20 of the TDFs, 11 National Guardsmen, 3 border guards, 2 naval forces, and 2 state transport service members were all released from Russian captivity today. And here are some of the pictures showing them finally getting back into Ukraine. And it's great to see, and good to know they finally made it out of there. And one guy was really happy to make it out of there and have some posture, because of course food is hard to come by in a prisoner of war camp. And we can see this guy enjoying the paska for the first time probably since his captivity. And also, we got to mute the music because it sounds like a Marvel action movie, but this guy loves it. And freedom has never tasted any better.
Man's gonna go into like a seizure in a minute over this.
Dude, he's sitting there saying in Ukrainian, "Let's go, let's go!" You know, he's like going crazy. But still, great to see him enjoying some food right out of captivity. And with that, we have now covered all of the news from north to south, east to west. We've covered everything in Ukraine that pertains to the war today. And so, without further ado, here is the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 300 and 317? What am I joking? It's day 417 now. I've got to live in the modern day, old man. Like I'm starting to feel like an old person around here because I'm sitting here going 317. What the hell do I think this is? December? But anyways, here's the clip of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky today, and it's actually an Easter address as well. So here's the clip. Speech.
Великі народи великої країни. Наприкінці минулої зими...
Oh, wait a minute, hold up. The subtitles ain't right. English. I need English. Thank you.
Росія принесла на нашу землю повномасштабну війну, а з нею смерть, біль та морок. Вранці 24 лютого сонце так і не зійшло, світанок так і не настав. Вранці 24 лютого почалася темна ніч. І водночас почалося наше пробудження, наша боротьба. Темрява не змогла затьмарити наш дух, прагнення волі, любов до рідної землі та готовність її захищати. Ми зберегли світло, світло всередині себе, перемогли паніку, страх, міжособиці і чвари. Ми об'єднались. Мільйони спалахів у мільйонах українських сердець стали одним великим багаттям. У цьому вогні гартувалася наша міць і незламність. Цей вогонь не дав згаснути наші надії та вірі. Цей вогонь побачив увесь світ. Згуртувався довкола нього, став поруч із нами. Тоді ми перемогли розпач, зневіру, втому, біль. Мільйони вогників в очах мільйонів українців злилися в один потужний промінь світла. Він допоміг не заблукати в пітьмі, не збитися з дороги, осяяв шлях до правильної мети. Це те, за що боролися різні покоління у різних століттях. Те, за що останні 9 років і 417 днів віддавали життя наші воїни світла, захисники і захисниці України. Те, за що ми б'ємося проти темних сил сьогодні, це наш світанок, наше відродження, це розсвіт незалежної України. Ми відзначаємо сьогодні свято Воскресіння Господнього. Його головним символом є перемога. Перемога добра, перемога правди, перемога життя. З непохитною вірою у незворотність цих перемог ми зустрічаємо Великдень. Цього дня, рік тому, всі ми молилися, щоб Україна вистояла. Сьогодні, щоб Україна перемогла. Ми не лише чекаємо і просимо, а здобуваємо і творимо цю перемогу самі. 417 днів ми вже пройшли чималий шлях. Попереду в нас чи не найважча з вершин. Ми подолаємо її і разом зустрінемо свій світанок, коли над усією нашою країною зійде сонце. Це синьо-жовтий прапор. Він неодмінно підійметься на всій нашій Богом даній землі, на всіх тимчасово окупованих чортами територіях. Наш прапор замайорить на берегах Азовського моря і Сіверського Дінця, над Териконами та Айпетрі. Сонце засяє на півдні, сонце засяє на сході, сонце засяє в Криму. Жовто-гаряче сонце у мирному синьому небі. І це світло справедливості, це світло воз'єднання людей і сімей, українців, усіх, хто зараз на фронті, і всіх, хто допомагає їм у тилу. Сяйво усмішок переможців та їхніх родин, блиск бойових орденів героїв, які повернуться, блиск щасливих очей батьків, дітей, коханих і близьких, які дочекаються. Це світло відродження, відбудова того, що знищив і понівечив окупант, відбудова нашої прекрасної країни, яка в майбутньому стане ще прекрасніше. Це світло, світло істини і правди, торжество закону і правосуддя, притягнення до відповідальності та покарання всіх, хто віддавав і виконував злочинні накази, всіх, хто вбивав, катував, грабував і відповідатиме і в міжнародному трибуналі, і на суді Божому. Небеса бачать нашу віру і твердість, світ бачить нашу відвагу і незламність, ворог бачить нашу силу і рішучість, а отже Україна побачить світло перемоги. Віра в неї єднає всіх нас завжди, а особливо сьогодні, у Великдень, що споконвіку був для українців родинним святом, днем тепла, надії, великого єднання. Війна не змогла стерти нас, наші цінності, наші традиції, наші свята і ті найголовніші речі, які вони символізують. І тому, хоч би де ми відзначали Пасху, хоч би де кожен із нас зараз був, ми зустрічаємо Великдень разом. Ми одна велика сім'я українців. У нас одна велика домівка – Україна. У нас одна велика мета – перемога. Для всіх тих, хто вже не з нами, хто віддав життя за Україну, ми пам'ятаємо кожного і просимо в Бога упокоїти їхні душі. Ми віримо в кожного, хто продовжує боронити батьківщину, і просимо в Бога захистити їх і вберегти. Всіма силами ми боремося за свою землю і просимо сприяння небесних сил у сотнях молитов, які промовляли наші предки перед боєм, які допомагають і бережуть наших воїнів сьогодні. Одягнувшись завісою Христа, шкіра моя, панцир залізний, кров, руда, міцна, кістка, меч булатний, швидше стріли, пильніше сокола, броня на мені, Господь у мені, щоб було завтра, щоб був мирний світанок, щоб була перемога, щоб була Україна. Христос воскрес! Воістину воскрес!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the Eastern Orthodox Easter. And that rounds out tonight's news summary on the largest fundraiser we have held in an incredibly long time. And now let me get my YouTube back up on my phone. Thank you, YouTube, so much for removing that from the live chat. We love it over here. We love it. Keep doing you. Keep doing you. Let's see. What? We've been age restricted.
Really?
We've been age restricted. What? No way. How rude. What do we do wrong? We didn't show anything wrong. Oh, man, come on. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Get no respect around here. I'm running a fundraiser. They age restrict me. People can still donate to the fundraiser, though. Let me check my email. Let me make sure that's right. Would you believe it, folks? Would you believe it? We got age restricted. What's great about
That's
these
crazy.
what's great about the age restrictions is that they never tell you why you're age restricted. They just age restrict you, and then they don't let you know what part of it's age restricted or anything. It's just all age restricted now. I love it. I love to see it. I love to see it. Call them out. Call them out. But still, with that, after such a great speech, it is now the end of tonight's news segment. We're going to be moving into the question segment here in a minute, but we've raised $18,105 as we're speaking right now. And that means that we've made it to about $919,000 raised in support of Ukraine over all of our fundraisers. $919,000. We're only about $80,000 away, 81 really, from being at $1 million. And I think that's absolutely incredible. Someone said because of war footage. Oh man, I mean, you got a good point there. It's just that we run war footage every single night. We don't get age restricted almost every single night. So I have a feeling that it's some people out there who are kind of salty that the fundraiser has done so well. Call them out. Call them out.
Call them out.
But anyways, I still thank every single one of y'all so much once again for getting this fundraiser to where it is. $18,215 is going to help save many soldiers in rehabilitation and help them to go and live the lives that they once had before the war. And I've got to thank every single one of y'all once again for helping this fundraiser to get to where it is. And so with that, we're now going to be moving into the question segment, which will last for probably about until 11:30 local time or 12:30 Eastern time, and then we'll be rounding out tonight's stream because tomorrow I have to get up and go do a presentation at college very early in the morning to try and make sure that I can graduate. And so, laying out there on the line like that, let's call out the top donors in between the last question segment and this one.
All right, and we have a few. And the first one we have is a $100 donation from Sharon Flynn, as well as a $55 from Corrill Danilo. Hopefully I'm saying that properly. We also have a 50 from Axel K, Greg Carrier, and Skip Tracer 007. So big thanks to you all so very much for helping us to reach such a high number on the fundraiser tonight.
And I have to agree. I have to thank each and every one of y'all so much for helping us to get to $18,265 raised, at least as far as what my phone is showing me, because no other channel on YouTube is able to do that on a weekly basis. And it's absolutely unbelievable to think that y'all have helped to make this possible tonight, to help save so many Ukrainian soldiers from a worse fate. And so with that, thank you all so much once again. And it's now time for us to move on into those polls. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, and let's hop right into our first poll, which says China's defense minister makes first trip to Russia to discuss military cooperation, and what are your thoughts? 41% said he went to provide military support, 10% said unsure, 19% said he only went to anger the West, and 29% said it's a mix of options 1 and 4. And I'm going to say it's probably a mix. They are definitely trying to anger the U.S., that's apparent at this point. And also, I do believe he probably went to either provide military support or to check on the military support that they've already sent. Otherwise, why would the defense minister be making a trip to Russia and not a diplomat? But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, in my personal opinion, probably give them some military expertise. The Chinese are probably going to go up there and go, maybe suck less and then leave. That's probably what they're doing. So I would have to honestly go with it's probably a mix as well, but most likely for military expertise. And so with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one says, is China on track to replace the United States as the world's #1 global superpower? 46% said no. 22% said it's largely unknown, 25% said yes at the current rate they will, and 7% said unsure. And I'm with the 22%. I think it's largely unknown. We do have to stay on our toes because China is somewhat getting up there in the rankings, at least in my opinion. But I think if we make sure we're good over here in the U.S. and keep all of our stuff good and up to date without getting into politics, I'm trying to avoid that right here, I think we'll probably stay above China. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, first off, to answer this question before we get to this poll, Jay Atkins says, why is it saying that this is offensive content, brothers? That's because we've been laying it out, brother. I'm just kidding. We don't know what has caused that to happen. It just happened. We really don't know what it is. So we're as much at a loss as you are right now as to why this thing was age restricted, because we went out of our way to make sure we didn't show anything age restricted. Moving on from that, however, I would say that the United States... United States, China GDP. So this is the Chinese GDP, and that's the US GDP side by side. And you can see that the Chinese economic growth, their GDP growth, has been consistently around the 8% range, or even higher than that, even getting up to about 15% growth in a single year. Going off of that, we can also see that the United States is actually a pretty decent percentage below that, only around 2.3 to, even as low as 1.7 to about 3% GDP growth every single year. So right now, in terms of annual GDP growth, the Chinese are outdoing us by a pretty okay margin, actually. They're getting on up there. And you can see that right here when you look at the GDP graphs as well. And this is what the Chinese appear to be outdoing us on, is just raw GDP growth. But if you look at military spending, U.S. military spending, spending versus Chinese, China, and let's see here. So here we go. Here's a graph from 2019. The Chinese were spending $244 billion on their military, while we were spending $766 billion. Very nice, very juicy. And I think that is probably what's going to be the largest divider in between, I guess you could say, the United States and China, is that we have hundreds of overseas bases. They have a handful. We have a pretty large and very well-built service fleet, as well as a submarine fleet. They really don't, although it has large numbers. Their economy is growing rapidly, but it's incredibly fragile, and shoving it could probably send it straight into a depression. And when I say depression, I'm not talking about a Sudan-level depression where the GDP literally jumps off of a cliff and dies like this. I'm talking about a depression where it just starts to flatten out and then not really grow as much. Because we did see something like this happen for a good while in between the Soviet Union and the United States. And eventually, the Soviet Union's GDP would end up stagnating and just kind of flattening out while the United States would continue to climb. So I have a feeling that's most likely what we're going to be seeing coming into the future, is that they'll probably start to stagnate, because this kind of economic growth can't really last forever at this kind of speed. It never really does. Even for the Japanese, who were way up there for a good while, it flattened out for them, as you can see right here. They peaked at 5.5 trillion. They've gotten a little bit above that here and there, but they're just kind of middling at this point, and that's mostly what the Chinese will end up doing as well. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I see some people saying, "No, you're wrong. Go watch so-and-so." I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying this is my opinion. You know what I mean? Capiche? But with that, I hope I addressed that fairly well in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next poll says the U.S. has joined a nuclear fuel alliance to share supply chains for nuclear fuel. And what are your thoughts? 20% said it's bad to consolidate supply chain. 26% said unsure. 18% said if that's the best option. And 36% said if it's good for efficiency, bravo. And I'm with the 36%. I believe the people we partnered with is the UK, Japan, and I can't remember the other countries. France was not one of them, by the way. But we trust those allies pretty closely. So they're probably not going to turn on us anytime soon, or at least we don't think so. So if it's good for efficiency, I would say go for it. And apparently they already have. So pretty good call. I'm not sure if, nuclear fuel alliance, if that means basically nuclear fuel only for power stations, like the nuclear facilities, or if it means for weapons too, but I'm not really sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
If it's nuclear fuel, that most likely means for just reactors alone and not weaponry. So it's not really that revolutionary to me, because these people are just, I guess trying to make nuclear fuel a little bit cheaper for themselves. Probably not going towards weaponry, but you never know. So with that, I hope that does address that poll, in my opinion, fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And just in case I see a lot of people saying it, yes, we are age restricted. It is in fact a thing. We don't know why. We are as in the dark as y'all are as to why this thing got age restricted. But one thing you can always do to help this channel to keep on going is to make sure to hit the like button, because that does help us to kind of outdo the age restrictions by a small margin. It doesn't really help out a lot. Age restrictions are usually a death nail for people being able to watch this stream. But y'all could always do that if you wanted to help us to get this thing, I guess you could say, flying again. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next poll says, do you think that Ukraine has the potential to become a weapons development / production powerhouse? 76% said yes, it's an untapped market for them. 7% said unsure. 5% said they shouldn't pursue it. And 12% said they aren't ready for that. And from what I've seen, it looks like while Ukraine is very ingenuitive on the battlefield and creating new weapons on the spot, I haven't seen anything yet to suggest that Ukraine is going to be, for example, like the Israel level of weapons development. I think Israel is probably one of the most innovative places for weaponry in the world right now. I don't think Ukraine's there yet, so I'm with the 12%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that they're probably not going to get to that level. Yes, they do have some pretty interesting weaponry that they have been developing, and I see a lot of people saying that it actually says it's offensive. That's an age restriction. It says inappropriate or offensive. That's what an age restriction says nowadays. It's just that they've kind of updated the wordage. It's like, why though? Anyways, moving on from that. Because I see that is all the rage in the live chat right now. I have no idea why, though. I have no idea what anyone would be talking about. It's not like it's making it harder for people to find the stream or anything. And I also don't understand how it's inappropriate or offensive, considering we've raised, okay, let me confirm, $18,300 in support of saving Ukrainian lives. I don't really know how that falls within the criteria. But, YouTube does have everyone's best out for them. They know what's best, right? I bet you they do. I bet you money they do. And now they're going to start knocking our kneecaps out because I'm saying stuff like that. But I would have to say they're probably not going to become a large arms developer like the Turks have, because while their weapons are neat, they just really haven't established themselves like that. That would probably take decades to be able to do. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll, so we are moving on to our live chat questions. And up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. JP's Gone Fishing, Rumpelstiltskin, C. Fay, Mark Hodges, Cliff Simonson, Dark Warrior 137, and Paul Schultz. They said the Morse code says, what in the world? Ukraine be whipping out the thingamajig while Russians use a spade. Slav LSA and Slav Ukraine. Igor.
That's the sound of money. Y'all got that correct. It is, in fact, the Morse code message. The Ukrainians are pulling out the thingamabob or the thingamajig and Bakhmut, that weird APC thing. Meanwhile, the Russians are fighting with spades. It's funny to me, and I hope that does address that Morse code message fairly well. And thank y'all once again for always making sure to decipher that message. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank y'all once again for helping this channel to always have the Morse code message deciphered. And also, some people are talking about, oh, I hate YouTube. Back in the day when we started running this stream, I kind of understood where they were coming from, because they are a company that has to keep up an image, all that kind of stuff. But nowadays, like with tonight, it's like, what in the hell did we even show that was questionable? I can't even think of anything, really. I mean, that isn't out of the norm. And I'm sitting here like, what the hell? Why in the world would they do that? And some people are saying maybe they did that so that way less people would see the fundraiser because they're getting tired of having to do all of the paperwork for this stuff. I don't know. Maybe that is the case. I don't really know. But still, very interesting points from all of y'all. They may all be right. They may be wrong. Who knows? But still interesting. And so with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And, I personally wouldn't be upset about them age restricting it if they didn't, knock us down in the algorithm and also take away the ability to, like, do super chats and stuff like that. Why do they have to implement that simply because something is, potentially offensive?
I don't know. And also, that is really annoying to us, is that it's like Russian roulette sometimes. Like, we could show a video, and then we get age restricted. And, of course, the only way we keep the stream running is for super chats, and then people can't super chat. And so we just take, we receive hardly anything in support sometimes, some nights, because of what they do. And what's also interesting to know is that this isn't anything where the algorithm or like a machine looks through it. The age restrictions are because someone out there is actually filing out deliberately, reports on the stream, and that's how it's getting age restricted. So always keep that in mind. There's someone behind the scenes somewhere that is trying to report the stream to get it age restricted. So, always keep that in mind, because there's a couple of people out there who are likely suspects. Boom, boom. If you know what I mean.
Ball them out.
Clip it, will ya? Clip it, will ya? But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Kirk Larson, who says, how likely is a Kherson crossing the primary invasion point in the counteroffensive?
Kherson, it's highly unlikely. Crossing in the Dnipro, highly unlikely. The river's too wide. It would be very dangerous. It would incur high casualties. It's probably next to zero, in my opinion, that they would cross it. So with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. And I also just saw a question I wanted to answer, Matthew. Sax2 said, King Charles III is getting his coronation next month. Are you both getting an invite, since the president couldn't be bothered accepting? We have not gotten an invite. Sadly, I would actually go over there to a coronation if we were invited. So if you want to, you can always send a letter to your MPs and tell them that there's someone over here in the United States that could be invited to the coronation. We would actually make the time to show up. I would actually make the time to show up, because that's kind of like a once-in-a-lifetime thing, usually in modern British history, to see a coronation. So, it'd be something to see. So with that, sadly, we have
to see the coronation with his good sir, King Charles, and his beautiful wife, Camilla.
I was about to say that, my beautiful wife, Camilla. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And someone said, what? That's a low blow. You know the one I'm looking at, Matthew, right, in the live chat?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing, you see. That's the thing. You see, we're just hated on. Let me pull out my tiny violin here. We're just hated on. Oh man, he couldn't get on the year's anniversary show or whatever. So since then, he made it a vendetta to go against us. We just completely ignored the guy. after he blew us off for a whole 2 months before the year's anniversary show happened, and so we just stopped talking to him and just ignored him altogether. And then he decided to go on the offensive, and so then we start making jabs at the guy because he wants to try and discredit us on everything, and then he wants to play a tiny violin. It's like, whatever, man. You know, like, you do you, or whatever. You know, it's sad. Clip it, please, will you? I'm begging you. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to, let's see here from the live chat, Jeff Lieberman, who says, Matt, what is your prediction for the upcoming Ukrainian spring offensive?
I would say, and I love how Matthew will sit there and have the question addressed to him, and then he just leaves it hanging. He's like, I'm going to hand it over to enforcers. It's like, nope, he just says it. And I was actually giving you leeway there, Matthew, to say what you think would happen during the...
You go right ahead. I'll defer to you on this one.
Okay, so the counteroffensive, we have two different directions it could go in. It could go to Starobilsk, or it could go south towards Melitopol. It seems as though a lot of people are saying that it'll probably go south towards Melitopol. And I'm thinking that's probably more likely, to be honest with you. We'll probably see the Ukrainians create a concentrated thrust in one direction. I'm not going to say where, but it'll be an attempt to drive a wedge in between both sides of the Russian lines and to divide them up to then take later. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And Luke Amano said, why keep talking about it then? Because it angers us. You know, to answer that question too, it angers us, you know? Like the beef wasn't ever even meant for that person from the start, and then they made it into being all about them. I mean, hell, you know, if you really want to, and you go through the whole history of the thing, I mean, if he was the bigger guy in this whole story, why in the world didn't he email us and ask us if we were talking about him? Because we weren't, and that's why we didn't send him an email for 3 weeks, because we weren't talking about him. So it's like, don't get your panties in a wad over something that isn't even about you. But anyways, with that, and Bill said, you have a warning on stream. We do know. But with that, I hope I addressed that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one we have goes to Andy, who says, what's with the Russian army and sticking things in their comrades as punishment?
I don't know what it is about that. It's a great question. I just don't know. I can't really explain that. There's some kind of like sickness in the Russians that make them want to do that as punishment, but that is a sick kind of punishment. Honestly, I feel like getting shot in like by a firing squad is less like not as bad as that. I'll put it that way. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Aimless Savant, who says, likelihood of success of an offensive operation to counter and circle the Russians in Bakhmut.
It'd probably be unlikely, because the Ukrainians are putting a decent amount of effort into holding that city, and the Russians are putting literally everything they have into it. And it appears that they're making minor progress. The Ukrainians probably wouldn't want to send their efforts there, because that would be the most difficult part of the line to fight in. They probably want to go to quieter and less populated parts of the lines, like the northeastern area or the southern front. Anywhere that's not Bakhmut or Donetsk is a place they should go, and a place they easily could succeed in, really. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a question from Margaret Hemsley, who's just said good night, but guess what? We're going to answer your question real quick. She says, could drones blow up or damage train lines in Russia?
They could, but it would be really hard for them to, because blowing up railway tracks isn't that big of a deal, really. A repair crew can get out there and usually repair that within 12 to 24 hours of the initial damage, no matter how severe it is, because it's very easy to do that. However, destroying a bridge is usually quite expensive and also very hard to repair. So they could do that, but they would usually have to find bridges. And that's very hard to find in places like Eastern Europe, because there isn't really a lot of, I guess you could say, changes in the terrain. It's incredibly flat. So there isn't really a need for an excessive amount of bridges. So it would be hard to find those, but it is completely possible. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Dennis, who says, do you think Putin intentionally let Nutsack destroy his own army to eliminate a domestic threat? Gave him just enough support, ...
Yes, we actually been saying that for a while. He may have had Nutsack destroy the Wagner, and then also make sure they couldn't recruit from prisons, so that way their strength wouldn't grow and it would shrink. We've been saying that for a pretty good while here, and I would say that that assessment, as far as our opinion goes, is right on board with ours. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a question from Avari Mendebratis, who says, what is the most effective way of decimating trenching networks in a rapid attack without using tactical nukes?
Reread that one again. I'm sorry, I got lost with the tactical
Whoa,
nuke part.
what are you saying, man?
What happened? Wait a minute. I'm sorry. We can't joke about that one, because then people will think we don't joke on everyone. So let me make sure to get this guy into, or whatever. That's not a tumor. But anyways, let's reread the question again.
What is the most effective way of decimating trenching networks in a rapid attack without using tactical nukes?
The best way to destroy trenching networks, that's impossible, really. It's really hard to destroy a trench unless you just hit it with so much artillery fire that it becomes a part of the terrain. Like, it just becomes a small little elevation feature because you just shell it out. Or you could wait for rain. There's really no way to destroy them rather than shelling them out or waiting for rain. You could cross them, though, with armored vehicles.
Or you could, launch a nuke from under the trench.
I don't know about that. That's a little overboard. Well, it's
I like how you took a minute to think about that one before you rebutted it.
Yeah, because I was like, well, you could, but it's overboard, just for destroying a trench. But not a bad idea. It's just that, it's nuclear war. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jack's Dragon, who says, did you see the 2 mobile training simulators for the Leopard tanks from Canada?
I did not. Actually, I think I have. Correction, I have. I do remember seeing those. Those are incredibly cool because it's like the whole turret and everything, and they're like inside of a turret basket, and it actually articulates and it bounces whenever the vehicle is supposed to be on the move. It's really cool if I'm remembering the right one. And so, yes, I have seen them, and they are pretty neat. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, Confarelli said you could use an A-10. I mean, it depends on how deep that trench is.
Actually, I would have to disagree with you, Confarelli. I think A-10s are for digging trenches, not getting rid of trenches. That thing is going to be digging one. Like, the A-10, you're going to say, we need to clear a trench, and the A-10 is going to fire, and all the shells are going to land 10 meters to the left, and you're just going to have a secondary reserve trench for them now back there for the 30 mils. I'm just kidding with you. That may actually be a good way to clear out a trench. Probably one of the best we've seen. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Ukraine F. Putin, who says, Matt, what exactly does it mean when an area comes under someone's control? Are they now out of the range of the adversary's artillery?
It doesn't mean that they're out of range of the artillery. It just means that that area has no presence of the other side's forces, and it's completely under control of one or the other. And so that means that it comes under their complete control. Because both sides in Bakhmut, if we take a look at this front line, both of these sides, both the Ukrainian and the Russian side, are within artillery range of each other, but it's clearly within their control because it's not contested. Meanwhile, the gray area in between the red and the white is contested, and so that's why it's called no man's land, or it's covered in gray, is because nobody really knows what clear level of control either side possesses in this area. So with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
It's not somebody in the chat just mentioned a minute ago, put the beaver back down in the trench and that'll take care of it.
Dude, that beaver almost ate that guy's ankle.
It did. They made that thing almost into a national animal until it kind of faded away, and then it kind of lost popularity a little bit.
Yeah, sadly, but man, that thing was beaving it up. Beave it up, beave it up.
Call it out, call it out.
Call them out. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Psyops, and he says, have you seen the new Taiwanese fighters, the F-CK1? Oh, yikes. How do you feel about the abbreviation?
Oh, that's not a fighter. We've been had. That was when I typed that in.
No, I think it actually is one. And the call sign just happened to be that.
Oh, it is? Are you kidding me?
That was either a bad coincidence or a good
oh
thing.
My god, it's the indigenous fighter. I showed this thing literally like last night. It's pretty cool in my opinion. I like it. I think it's neat. It looks like it's a very interesting design, taking a lot of lessons from American aircraft design to be implemented into this thing. But I think they're pretty neat overall. What do you think about it, Matthew?
They're okay. They're okay. But yeah, they're okay.
They are.
Yeah, it's alright.
And
No
they're
cap.
not exactly new. They're about 30 years old, I think. Yeah, they're about 30 years old at this point. But still, it's not that bad. It's not a bad plane. It's pretty cool. It is comparable though to like an F5 with 2 engines, one rudder or one rear stabilizer. The wing profile is similar. The intakes are similar. It's more like a highly upgraded F5 in a way that is larger. But still, it's not a bad aircraft at all. I think it's a pretty neat one. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well from our boy Psyops. And we can also see a new prototype here at an Arms Expo. That is actually a pretty cool paint job. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Eric Kress, who says, Matt, I was just wondering, do you guys ever go back and watch some old videos of the stream? And for me, I never do, because I don't like to hear ourselves talk. Funnily enough, it's just kind of strange going back and listening to yourself talk for this long. But Enforcer, what about you?
I would have to agree with that as well. I never go back and watch the streams because whenever you hear yourself talk, even though I sound way better than when we started way back in 2021, well, when I started back in 2021 and was doing voiceovers and stuff, I still don't like to hear myself because it's weird. It's weird, and I don't like to hear myself. Also, to answer the question of someone who appears to have actually gotten the Executioner's Blade, they say, if you have ignore him, why every night in your question segment you talk about him every night? Well, that's because when we leave this guy alone, he decides to become the police of our channel and tell us what we can and can't do, and decides to harass us, which is against the YouTube's policies. So we take any chance we can to take a crap on the guy, because he's pretty intent whenever we've decided, okay, we're just going to leave it alone and drop it, to bring it back up again. So at this point, our running policy is we're not going to name him, we're not going to call him out, because of course that goes against YouTube's harassment policies and get in major trouble for that. But still, don't like the guy at all, and I'll make that clear. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Loren Notsky, who says, do you think that some of the untalked about weapons will end up in the offensive?
The untalked about weapons. Yes, if you're talking about like the Western tanks, which haven't really been talked about much. Yes, I do think those will largely be held for a Western offensive. They are far more advanced and far more capable, giving the Ukrainians a decent amount of leeway to work off of. So I would say they're most likely going to be used in the offensive instead. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are going to be moving on to the next. Also, Andy, look at this. Taylor McDowell said, do you know for sure he's messing with you? Well, yeah, because he makes like whole 10-minute segments every once in a while on the stream and literally just calls out our channel by name. So I know that he's certainly, you know, messing with us. It couldn't be anyone else. Clip it. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Laron Rich, who says, can we look into how many APVs are left? I just feel like Russia can't have too many left.
Man, it's a good question. Let's see. How many APCs does Russia have? List of equipment of the Russian ground forces. Let's go here. And of course, Wikipedia only gives general estimates, so we don't know the exact number. These are kind of like close approximations. Wait a minute, was that a bullpup? Huh. Interesting. I didn't know they had bullpups. They only have one. Wait a minute, they have this one. That is hideous.
Oh dear. Wait a minute, is that
looks like an AK
foregrip at the front? Is that like the extension of the barrel?
I think it is.
What in the hell?
Man.
What is even that?
What the hell is that? Oh my God. It's got an AK-74 pistol grip. It's got the trigger and trigger guard and everything. It even has the dust cover for an AK up here. Like you can see it. It's the exact same one. And then they added a butt plate back here. They put a vertical foregrip onto it crudely. They put an AK-74 front guard on it. And then some kind of a carry handle. This is literally just an AK receiver back here. The whole thing is an AK receiver. This is terrible. Ew.
Excuse me.
That thing's cursed. It really is cursed. But anyways, we're going to be moving on. let's see. We're going to be moving on. I think we're making it to the APCs finally. I think they were right down here. Nope, that's not it. That's a Nona. I think we're getting close, though. We've got to be getting close. Oh, here we go. So, we have thousands of BMPs. There's only 470 of them active, but there's plenty in reserve. We know they've been pulling them out of reserve. There's 2,900, about 3,000 BMP2s active in the Russian army with 1,500 reserve. Not really a lot of those. And then 640 BMP3s. And we've seen a decent amount of those get destroyed. So in total, from what we can tell, they have at least about 12,000, 11,000 or so BMPs available. And then we move on down to the other APCs. We can see that they don't actually have that many MTLBs. They have less MTLBs, both active and in reserve, than they do BMP1s at all. So it seems as though they have a lot of APCs they could work with. And of course pull out of reserve. But once again, you have to remember, only so many of the ones in reserve are still operational at all. A lot of them are just pieces of steel that are just rusting away. So I would say they probably have several thousand APCs left, but they're going through them like there's no tomorrow. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we're going to be moving on to the next one. But just to address some other stuff that we've been seeing in the live chat, some people are saying, report this guy or call him out. And you see, if we call him out and then have people go report him, that I have to believe that still falls under YouTube's harassment policies. So it's really something that we can only keep with ourselves and try and deal with instead of telling all of y'all, because then that could be viewed as harassment. So there's not really a lot we can do rather than just, then riff on the guy, really. And that's what we do. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Rob Eisman, who says, I'm curious if a tanker out in the LSA knows the recoil felt within a tank, Leopard, Abrams, or Challenger, and thinks.
And that's a question I can't answer, but hopefully a tanker like Jesus UCSB can answer, maybe. And so with that, I hope that does answer that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to David, who says, given the leaked Pentagon docs, some anti-war American YouTubers seem to take that leaked data as a sign that Ukraine is losing the war. I totally disagree, but what are your thoughts?
I would totally disagree with that as well, because if the Ukrainians were losing the war, how come they haven't already lost? Because, they've done fairly well for 417 days, and it wouldn't really make much sense for them to be losing the war, yet the Russians are still suffering to just take a city block or two every day. So with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Christian Cruz, who says, I wonder how much Prigozhin is losing with the Sudanese riots right now. He has been using the Wagner Group to control gold mines in Sudan.
Well, actually, I wouldn't really have a lot of an opinion on the coup in Sudan, because, to be honest with you, don't really know a lot about Sudan, its politics, or its diplomacy or anything similar like that. All I know is that they're in the middle of a coup right now. I haven't really been following them much. I didn't actually know the Wagner was present in Sudan at all yesterday, but they are. But it doesn't appear that they're actually actively involved right now in this conflict in Sudan. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are going to be moving on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Richard Rohde, who says, do you think there would be issues if U.S. got into a war with construction of modern aircraft due to the foreign content that is used these days? Example, F-35 has parts from many, many other countries.
I don't think we'd really run into a problem with that all too much, because modern wars are not necessarily about mobilization anymore. It's more so about what you have at the start and how long that will last you. At least that's what it seems modern wars have turned into, because like you say, so many of the parts come from so many different countries. There's really no way to keep those supply lines existent once a war begins on an international scale. So I would say that as long as we outnumber our enemy and are able to conserve our losses compared to theirs, we should be on the winning side of a war and not really have to worry about a continuing supply line or having to produce more of those aircraft. Although I would still say we need to work in the direction of figuring out how to do that, because that would, of course, give us a needed advantage over any of our opponents that will have that home field advantage of being able to ship stuff across the land by rail instead of by sea like we'll probably be doing. And so with that, I hope that does address that question fairly well, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Mando, who says, how many villains do you foresee coming out of this war in the future from all the mental trauma at all levels, from emboldened psychopaths to armed gangs to domestic violence?
don't really know. That's a good question. And I really don't know if I'm even prepared to answer that one, because I don't really know. Because there's a lot of people who come out of war kind of for the better, and then there's a lot of people who are broken, and there are people who just embrace it and then go even worse. So I wouldn't even really know how to tell you. I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one, honestly. But Matthew, how would you like to answer that question?
I personally don't think anybody's going to come out of the war, being an emboldened psychopath. I think if anything, some people might learn that war and fighting and killing is not something you want to get involved with. Of course, it's not Ukraine's choice to get involved in it, but they've had to out of necessity. But no, I don't think that's really going to be a major problem. There might be one or two nuts here and there, but not a widespread thing.
And so with that, I hope that answers that question in Matthew's words fairly well. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Andrew Kujda, who says, what do you think of Poland and Ukraine joining at the end of the year?
Poland and Ukraine joining. Poland is a part of member, if you mean joining NATO. They are already actually a member of NATO. Ukraine joining NATO by the end of the year, that depends on if the war is over or not. If the war is over, they'll most likely be entering NATO fairly quickly. If the war is not over, we'll have to, of course, wait until next year. So it really depends on the situation involving the war and how long it lasts to really decide if Ukraine will be in this year or another year. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. Of course, only 2 hours and 30 minutes long, as most Sunday fundraisers are. It was still an amazing Sunday fundraiser nonetheless, raising a whopping $18,300 as of the count on my phone. We blew through 3 fundraiser goals: the $5,000 goal, the $10,000 goal, the $15,000 goal, and then we made it all the way up to $18,000, $3,000 over the final goal. It is absolutely unbelievable to think how great the Leaf Spring Army has been in helping to save the lives of Ukrainians around their nation and around the world for an entire 417 days. And I have to thank all of y'all so much once again for being part of such an amazing community and helping us to let the Leaf Spring Army be known around the internet for running an amazing fundraiser. People can love us, people can hate us, but I've never seen anyone say anything about the fundraisers. Everyone always talks greatly about the fundraisers, and that's one thing that can never be thrown into question, is that the Leaf Spring Army keeps these fundraisers alive, and it helps them to be some of the most widely known on YouTube in helping to save the lives of Ukrainian citizens. Of course, I have to thank everyone so much once again who donated. I have to thank everyone once again who was watching tonight for watching, and if y'all did enjoy, make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit the like button, and make sure to share this around with your friends and family, because of course that helps the Leaf Spring Army to continue to grow. It helps us to continue to make these fundraisers even larger, and it of course helps us to keep attention on the war in Ukraine. And thank you all so much once again for watching. I'll see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. We will not be running a stream tomorrow, so good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, and of course, Slava Ukraini!
And good night, Slav Ukraine, and Herom Slava.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття. нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького